Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Robot Girl Era. My robot girls are all world class. Chapter 61. The old man was very happy. Xingqian, this Echo Valley track is full of curves, are you afraid? Sun Yan pinched Xingqian's soft face. This little girl drank high-energy nutrient solution as water all day long, and her face seemed to become rounder. Don't be afraid, I have the master here, and I can just turn with wheels. Xingqian blinked her big eyes and let Sun Yan rub her face into various strange shapes, with a look of indifference on her face. What if I'm not here? I'm still a little scared. Xingqian said seriously, after all, the master only taught Lingfeng, not me. Sun Yan's fingers pinching Xingqian's face froze. Yesterday I asked you to train with Lingfeng, and it seems that you are the fastest, right? Lingfeng learned the skills because her master is not good, but my master is the most handsome and strongest master in the world. Xingqian stuck out her tongue, put her hands on her hips, and said confidently, if I knew everything like Lingfeng, the master would go to teach other mecha girls and ignore me, so I will always be a stupid mecha girl, so that the master's attention will always be focused on me. What a stupid mecha girl. Sun Yan laughed dumbly. Lazy is lazy, but he can find such a dignified and perverse reason. Only Xingqian, a smart guy, can think of it. He pinched Xingqian's nose and said with a straight face, Comrade Xingqian, our mission today is to overtake the number 1 and number 2 mechs. Yes sir, leave it to me, master. Xingqian saluted Sun Yan with a tight face, and the two high-fived each other, then entered the deployment mode and prepared to start. At this moment, the number 1 player has already started, and the number 2 position has also entered the countdown. Hearing what Sun Yan and Xingqian said, the number 2 starting position mech and the racer couldn't help but look ugly. This Sun Yan and Xingqian are too arrogant. The king of Nox Rally is indeed famous. But the Nox Rally and the Echo Valley training race are two completely different concepts. Although the latter is not a formal competition, it is a training track built according to the scale of the Silverstone Advanced Race, and the difficulty is much higher than the Nox Rally. Bluebird, we have run so many Echo Valley training matches after all, and you heard it too. What the couple behind said is simply humiliating us. In the driver's seat of the machine girl Bluebird, racer Sichi gritted his teeth and clenched his fists, his eyes full of fighting spirit. But master, they don't seem to say that to us on purpose. Bluebird glanced at the rearview mirror, relaxed his whole body, and silently waited for the countdown. No matter what, we must try our best not to let them overtake. Even if we take longer than them in the end, it would be too embarrassing if we were caught up on the track. Don't worry, master, there are no helicopters tracking and filming on the Echo Valley track, and no one will see it even if we are overtaken. Bluebird, you. Sichi wanted to say something, but the starting signal had already sounded in his ears. He started Bluebird almost like muscle memory. Maybe it was because of enough training, or maybe it was because he happened to meet the threat of Sun Yan and Xingqian today. Sichi felt that his driving condition was excellent today, and the corners that he thought were a bit tricky before were very smooth. Keep this state, our results in the Echo Valley training match today will not be bad. Sichi was full of fighting spirit and took a deep breath. He drove the Bluebird to a hairpin turn with regular deceleration. Many tracks in Echo Valley are sandy and gravelly. If the cornering speed is not reduced to a certain extent, it is easy to slip when turning, and the risk of the machine girl losing control will occur. The idea of a regular racer is to control the speed as much as possible to avoid the machine girl losing control. If you can maintain a good speed and suppress the slip to a certain limit, it will be very good, and this is the original concept of drifting, but the racer's understanding of this thing is still superficial, and so is Sichi. Even the king of Nox can't sprint at will on the Echo Valley track full of curves, right? Looking at the 3 consecutive hairpins in front, Sichi thought secretly in his heart. Buzz. Suddenly, the sound of an engine roaring came from the rain behind them. Sichi and Qingnao were stunned and subconsciously looked up at the rearview mirror. 2 silver-white beams of light first broke through the blockade of the rain and the mountain mist, spreading forward like 2 sharp swords, and then rushed into the field of vision was the highly recognizable front of Xingqian, and it was moving at a very fast speed. The speed is approaching. Looking at the pair of headlights, Siki's eyebrows jumped wildly, and he felt like he was being stared at by a beast. Master, they are catching up. The Bluebird's hurried voice sounded. She was also confused now. It was expected that Sun Yan and Xingchen would catch up, but she felt that she would have to run through 1/3 of the track before being caught up, right? But how long has it been since they started? 50 kilometers. This speed. Siki's face was pale, and his pupils shrank into needles. The road is wet now. Are they going to use this speed to pass the continuous hairpin bends in front? What a crazy move. He has seen the video of Sun Yan and Xingchen's Nox rally. He also knows that Sun Yan's cornering technique is extremely weird. The magic-like technique is amazing. Many racers in the circle secretly nicknamed Sun Yan magician, but even so, the showmanship in the Nox rally is far less crazy than now. Looking at the fast-approaching mecha girl behind, Siqi only felt a sword hanging on his waist getting closer and closer. He and Qing now had an inexplicable fear in their hearts. The track was actually quite wide, enough to accommodate 4 mecha girls driving side by side, but he still subconsciously controlled Qing now to pull over to make way for Sun Yan and Xingchen. Just as he gave up his position, a silver stream of light flashed from the side and passed by. Master, they actually gave us a seat, so good, so polite. I'm going to give them a durian after we get off the track. Xingchen glanced at the mecha girl who was gradually getting away in the rearview mirror. She was excited and confused. She had also run several races, but this was the first time she had seen such a situation. Sun Yan understood it very well. This is just like when professional drivers and wild drivers were racing in the previous life. The momentum brought by the speed and operation of the professional drivers would naturally deter those wild drivers. Now this scene also shows Xingchen's growth. Unconsciously, she has already begun to possess her own majesty. The mist in the mountains makes the visibility of the track low. The spectators at the 3 consecutive hairpins can only rely on the headlights to determine the position of the girl. They thought it was a blue bird with a blue body, but as the roar of the engine got closer and closer, they saw that it was actually a silver girl. The wind and rain were pushed away by her streamlined body, forming pale ribbons on both wings, like a pair of wings spread backwards. Someone picked up the camera and subconsciously took a picture of this scene. Isn't this contestant number 3? How did he get there before? No. 2. My God, they are so fast. This, they overtook. No. 2. This speed through the 3 consecutive hairpins, crazy. Many spectators have realized the danger and retreated from the observation point of the curve in panic. If the girl who is turning loses control later, the girl and the driver may not die, but if they are hit, they will just keep silent. Everyone thought that Sun Yan would slam on the brakes at the moment of entering the corner. But in fact, Xingchen's brake lights only flashed for a moment. Are you ready, Xingchen? The excitement is coming. Sun Yan's mouth curled up, looking at the track in front of him without any fear, only absolute confidence, even though this track was his first time running. Oh wow! Hearing Xingchen's cheers, he knew that Xingchen was ready. Then, at the moment of cutting into the corner, he slammed the joystick and entered an almost perfect turning point. The front of Xingchen's car was almost motionless, and the body of the car swung outward in an arc, like a pendulum. Crack! And because the road was slippery, the tire grip was not as good as before, and one side of the Xingchen's body was uncontrollably lifted, but it finally maintained at the critical point and danced wildly on the edge of the rollover. The audience near the corner was stunned. Even if Xingchen splashed water on his face, he didn't react. But then they saw even crazier operations. When Xingchen entered the second hairpin, it swung like a pendulum again, until it was about to roll over, and then faced the third hairpin, and swung back again with the same arc. After 3 consecutive pendulums, Xingchen's body was straightened on the track with a bang. White smoke rose from under the tires, and it drove away with the roar of the engine. Until Xingchen and Sun Yan had already run away, and until Qing now slowly began to turn, people realized that they could still breathe, but they just held their breath for too long, and everyone's face turned red. Why doesn't his car roll over? This person's control of the car body is too precise. Has he been practicing driving skills since he was in his mother's womb? The man who accidentally took a photo of Xingchen. The audience took out their phones to compare and exclaimed, I know who they are. The latest Nox Rally champion and current fastest record holder is Sun Yan Xingchen, and Sun Yan is also known as the magician. Magician. People couldn't help chewing on this title. If someone can do this kind of trick on a triple hairpin in the rain, what else can he be but a magician? After the race, the driver was able to finish the race. After overtaking the number 2 player, Sun Yan and Xingchen then overtook the number 1 player about 2/3 of the way through the Echo Valley. Although they were 1 minute behind the number 1 player in the starting time, this track full of curves was actually beneficial to him and Xingchen at the moment. His cornering skills were much stronger than those of the racers in this world. The Echo Valley training race took 72 minutes and 14 seconds. When Sun Yan and Xingchen came down from the track, the staff at the finish line were still having lunch. When they saw Sun Yan and Xingchen, all the instant noodles in their mouths sprayed out. "Oh my God, you've finished." The person in charge and organizer of the Echo Valley race came up to Sun Yan and Xingchen with a look of dementia on his face. He has run the Echo Valley race so many times, and the fastest driver and racer he has seen is around 75 minutes to reach the finish line. That was a player from a large club who came to fish. When he left, he didn't even ask for the prize money. As a result, this time he came back with something even more outrageous. 72 minutes and 14 seconds, what a joke. Among the players who generally take 80 minutes or even 85 minutes to complete the race, this result is simply outstanding. "I'm done," Xingchen stretched and said happily. "Boss, you developed this track well. It's exciting to run on, and the track is also cleaned very well." After that, she took out a durian from somewhere, smashed it on her forehead with a pop, and took out a small piece to share with the boss. "Since you worked so hard to make the track, Xingchen will share some of her favorite durian with you." "You're welcome." The boss took the durian blankly and stuffed it into his mouth under Xingchen's expectant eyes. "Not to mention, it's quite sweet." "Boss, how do I get to the audience area?" Sun Yan looked around and didn't see the cable car. "Are you still going to the audience area? Aren't you waiting to receive the award?" the boss asked blankly. "I'm not in a hurry to receive the award." Sun Yan spread his hands and said, "We finished so quickly just to go to the audience area to watch other girls compete." Yes, the wheels are all crooked." Xingchen pouted and moved her ankles. She couldn't wait to see Ling Feng's performance. The boss couldn't help but be silent. Running so fast just to watch other girls compete. This reason is really, forget it, I'll take you to the audience. The boss didn't know what to say anymore, and in the end, all he could say turned into a sigh. He couldn't understand the world of monsters after all. Before the game, Sun Yan asked Zhang Laolai to reserve a seat for him and Xingchen in advance. Zhang Laolai couldn't understand it at first, but when he saw Sun Yan driving Xingchen through the last difficult continuous hairpin bend at an incredible speed, he finally understood. Although Xu Yuyang and Lu Guang in front were not the first time to see Sun Yan and Xingchen passing the bend, when they saw Sun Yan pulling Xingchen over, they couldn't help but look at monsters. "Lu Guang, eat durian." Xingchen raised a piece of durian and handed it to Lu Guang's mouth. Lu Guang's pretty face was slightly red, and she subconsciously opened her mouth to catch it. The two girls looked at each other, and Lu Guang shyly said, "Thank you." Xingchen giggled, showing a satisfied smile of successful feeding on her face. "Ah, I really want to turn all my friends in this world into durian." She secretly glanced at Sun Yan. It's a pity that the master only eats a little bit each time. This transformation must start from the master, and there is a long way to go. "How many mechas have passed?" Sun Yan asked Xu Yuyang. "No, 14. Xu Yuyang replied. "We will see Ling Feng soon." Most players cannot escape the restrictions of the starting position. 30 seconds is enough to widen the gap on the track. It may be only Sun Yan Xingchen who overtakes 2 cars from the 3rd position to get the 1st place. At the same time, on the Echo Valley track, Po Yu swore that she had never been so anxious since she was born. Since the start of this race, she has focused her attention on the rearview mirror more than once. She was afraid to see the lingering figure in the rearview mirror again. Ling Feng, this unmanned robot, seemed to have been reborn. Although there was no driver assistance, it still broke the 30-second starting position limit and bit behind them tightly. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't get rid of it. Every time they turned a corner, the roar of Ling Feng's engine would quickly approach them. Close. Every time Po Yu hears that sound, she will feel frightened. "Did you get rid of it?" Han Si wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and asked nervously. He was almost mentally exhausted by Ling Feng. Today's Echo Valley training match should have been a sure win, but from the 7th corner, the sound of Ling Feng's engine appeared behind them, and as the number of corners increased, Ling Feng's body would appear in the rearview mirror from time to time like a ghost, and would only disappear when accelerating in a straight line. The two rushed through another corner. Po Yu took a breath. I think I got rid of it. Boom, buzz, buzz. As if to respond to her words. The sound of Ling Feng's engine approached again, and after the corner, the body also followed Po Yu's side and rear, staring at her. What a hell! Han Si angrily punched the joystick. Po Yu in front groaned, trembling with pain all over his body. She gritted her teeth secretly, venting all her anger on Ling Feng and Zhang Laolai, cursing Zhang Laolai's ancestors in her heart. What's wrong with Ling Feng? Why can driverless cars become so powerful? What did Zhang Laolai do to her? Po Yu had too many questions in her mind, but she didn't have time to think about them. She just wanted to distance herself from Ling Feng. Judging from the total time on the track, Ling Feng, who started 30 seconds later, was undoubtedly ahead of them. But Po Yu and Han Si didn't know. Ling Feng, who was following behind and absorbing the tail flow, had even greater ambitions. Want to overtake? No, not now, the master of Xingqian family said. Lie down, eat firewood, taste, and be brave. Ling Feng's sharp eyes were fixed on Po Yu in front of him. In fact, she had the opportunity to overtake at the previous bend. But this is very disadvantageous for her. Sun Yan taught her to learn to be patient. When the speed is not as strong as the opponent, you must learn to absorb the tail flow to increase your speed, so as to minimize the gap in the straight line. The real point to surpass Po Yu is the last 3 consecutive hairpins. Before that, even if you have the opportunity to overtake, you must hold back. Sun Yan's voice is still in my ears. Patience. Ling Feng lowered her head slightly, her flaxen bangs covered her sharp eyes, and seemed to cover up her sharpness. She recalled Sun Yan's words, the so-called patience is for the final victory. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The two girls were speeding on the track one after the other. At this moment, they were not far from the finish line. They were speeding on a long straight line and were about to enter the last difficult bend. The opportunity came. Ling Feng took a deep breath. At this moment, the rain had stopped, and the thin sunlight was separated from the clouds. The road in front of her seemed to be sprinkled with a layer of golden light, and the roar of the engine overwhelmed all distracting thoughts. She raised her eyes, and there was no Po Yu in her eyes. Only the curve. Such a narrow 3-pin hairpin, can I really pass it by myself? Even though she was well prepared, Ling Feng still couldn't help but have such doubts in her heart. Ling Feng, come on. Fighting. It was Xing Chen's voice. In the midst of the rush, even though the people and scenery around her had been pulled into a blurred line, Ling Feng's peripheral vision still clearly found Xing Chen's figure in it. She was waving at her with an encouraging smile on her face. The man next to her crossed his arms and looked steady. Just being stared at by them, my heart seemed to be burning. Find this feeling. Following Po Yu, Ling Feng calmly cut into the curve. I want you to feel like going home once you get on this curve. The man's voice echoed in my mind. The light and shadow of the track in front of me changed. It was no longer the 3 hairpin bends that were so steep that there were no guardrails around them. It had become a training track surrounded by ice cream barrels on an abandoned dock. Go home. Ling Feng drifted through the first hairpin accurately. She saw the surprised faces of Po Yu and Han Si in her peripheral vision. With the absolute advantage of cornering speed, she had easily overtaken the first hairpin, and then accurately passed the second hairpin, the third hairpin. The trajectory outlined by the beautiful tail swing gradually overlapped with her hard training on the dock training ground, without any difference. Thunderous cheers like tsunamis came from the audience area. Master, did you see it? She suddenly had the urge to cry. The moment she came out of the bend, the rain stopped and the sky cleared. Ling Feng rushed out of the shadows, and a beam of sunlight quietly fell on her. It also escorted her all the way to the finish line. The race was over, but the result was a long one. Ling Feng crossed the finish line. Han Si and Po Yu could only watch Ling Feng crossing the finish line. And they were only less than 100 meters away from Ling Feng. This 100-meter gap might give them one more second to surpass him, but so what? In the final results, they were always 30 seconds behind Ling Feng, an insurmountable 30 seconds. Lose, how is that possible? Han Si lay on the joystick, his face full of disbelief. He was originally just a wild racer, but was accidentally spotted and trained by a mechanic named Yang. With the help of Yang Tian, he quickly became a professional racer with an excellent mecha girl from a poor wild racer who had no money, and passed the Nox Rally assessment with good results. He only had one task, which was to do everything possible to trip up Zhang Laolai. Everything he had was given by Yang Tian. Yang Tian seemed to be easy to talk to, but Han Si knew very well that as long as any task was not done well, everything he had in his hands would instantly vanish. Asshole! What medicine did Zhang Laolai give Ling Feng? When did Ling Feng master the technology? You are so good, Zhang Laolai, deliberately keeping a hand, not teaching me but teaching Ling Feng. Very good. Po Yu's indignant complaints came from the front. She didn't know that Han Si had suffered such a big loss. For her, it was nothing more than returning to Zhang Laolai's side. There was no need to be afraid. Instead, she was very concerned about Zhang Laolai's concealment and hiding her incompetence. She thought to herself that she would go to Zhang Laolai to ask for an explanation later. No, there is still a chance. Han Si suddenly raised his head and muttered nervously. The agreement between us and Zhang Laolai is that Zhang Laolai and Ling Feng will participate in the competition together, but this competition was completed by Ling Feng alone, which does not meet the requirements of the agreement. Ha, ha ha ha. He laughed crazily. I won, I still won. My mansion, my daughter, my money, are all still there. All are still there, ha ha ha. Po Yu heard Han Si's nonsense behind him and quickly cancelled the expansion mode and took 2 steps back. Now she is a little displeased with Han Si. In the past, Han Si was an outstanding racing driver who was young and rich. Now, he becomes a crazy fool after a little blow. What can such a person achieve? In the audience, Master, Ling Feng won. Xing Chen raised 2 durians and jumped up and down to cheer. Seeing Ling Feng defeat Po Yu and Han Si, she was happier than if she had won the game. As expected, Sun Yan crossed his arms and nodded calmly. Everything was under control, but the only thing he didn't expect was that Ling Feng actually took the initiative to change the starting position to behind Han Si and Po Yu. This was undoubtedly a kind of pressure and test for Ling Feng, but she still faced it calmly, which shows that this little girl is tough and has a strong self-esteem. There are many different personalities of the mecha girls. Ling Feng is undoubtedly a very good mecha girl in terms of personality. In addition, her attributes are not bad, and she doesn't have too high requirements for the driver. Where can you find such a mecha girl? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but glance at Zhang Laolai behind him. Zhang Laolai was very excited when he saw Ling Feng win, but he was instantly depressed after being glared at by Sun Yan. He lowered his head and stared at his toes awkwardly, wishing he could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. Master, Ling Feng really won. Lu Guang looked at the girl who looked up and embraced the sky at the finish line, and a trace of envy appeared in his eyes. Ling Feng has proved herself and regained her own honor. When will it be her turn? Yes, she won. Xu Yuyang touched Lu Guang's head, his eyes fixed on Sun Yan's back, his eyes full of admiration. Originally, he thought Sun Yan was just a talented racer, and the wild ideas in his mind created his ghostly racing skills. Now he realized that his evaluation of Sun Yan was still too low. Strengthening oneself and strengthening others are completely 2 concepts and difficulties. This genius has the ability to turn decay into magic. So, he looked at Lu Guang beside him. Perhaps the day when Lu Guang returns to the track is not far away. In the corner of the stands, Zidian looked into the distance. The sun had just peeked out from the clouds, a rainbow hung in the sky, and the wind blowing in her face seemed full of colors. She sighed contentedly. It turns out that the dawn after the darkness really exists. It turns out that relying on yourself is not impossible. Okay, her life used to be muddled. Although she had a goal to strive for, this goal could be defeated by the hardships of life at any time, because she didn't know whether her goal was a bubble or real. Now Ling Feng gave her a perfect answer. Come on, Zidian. A faint smile appeared on the girl's pale face. She reached out to hook the hood, put her hands in her pockets, and walked briskly, jumping and disappearing in the corner of the stands. Ling Feng, you are great. When Ling Feng came back, Xingchen immediately rushed up and gave her a big hug. Xingchen is the best, Lingfeng blushed and said shyly. It took me so long to reach the finish line, and you and Sun Yan were already in the stands. Hoo, that's different. Xingchen patted Lingfeng on the shoulder. You are a smart mecha girl who won by yourself, and I am a stupid mecha girl who can only rely on the master, so you are better than me. After that, she opened a durian with a pop sound on her forehead, took out the biggest piece and stuffed it into Lingfeng. Smart Lingfeng, this is a reward for you, you have to teach me how to turn when you have time. Yes, Lingfeng nodded heavily, holding the durian piece of Xingchen, his eyes were red. It was a lucky thing to meet Xingchen. Well done, keep up the hard work. Sun Yan smiled and nodded. Although Lingfeng only learned the corners of the Echo Valley training match, what he taught Lingfeng will gradually expand from rigid knowledge to more skills as Lingfeng trains in the future, and those will depend on Lingfeng's own efforts. As the saying goes, the master leads the way, but the practice depends on the individual. That's the truth. And now Lingfeng has indeed been able to break away from Zhang Laolai and become an independent pilot. With the cornering skills she has learned, she can only choose others. Zhang Laolai is naturally very clear about this truth. So when Lingfeng stood in front of him, he was full of embarrassment and regret, but he also knew very well that Lingfeng could have better choices, such as Sun Yan and Xu Yuyang. Any of these two drivers can give Lingfeng a better future. Master, Lingfeng looked at Zhang Laolai with a bleak expression and spoke softly. I agree. Zhang Laolai interrupted Lingfeng in advance. He shrank his neck and sighed like a deflated ball, saying, Lingfeng, I agree that you can become Sun Yan's daughter. I'm sorry, I didn't train you well before, and I hope you can become better in the future. The two of them were very close, but the two of them were still very close. Zhang Laolai still felt very reluctant to let Lingfeng go. Although he took Lingfeng, who was eliminated from another club, out of sympathy, they had been together for such a long time, so they must have had some feelings for each other. Now that Lingfeng was about to leave, he suddenly recalled many good things about Lingfeng. Compared to Po Yu, who does nothing and acts like a big shot, Lingfeng not only helps with housework, but also follows him every time he goes to buy goods, helps him carry things, and wipes his sweat when he sees him tired. Later Po Yu left with Han Si, and he said he wanted to win Po Yu back. Lingfeng followed him to participate in underground competitions without any complaints, never complained about the hardship and tiredness, and even took the initiative to ask for modification. When he was arrested and locked up by Boss Shu, it was Lingfeng who cooked and took care of him every day, and talked with him to relieve his boredom. Along the way, Lingfeng seemed to play an unknown but indispensable role. It is hard to imagine how bad his life would be without Lingfeng. But now Lingfeng is leaving. Who can he blame? Zhang Laolai lowered his head with a bitter smile on his face. All this was his own fault. Oh, Lingfeng, did you hear that? Xingchen quickly came to Lingfeng, his face full of excitement, and deliberately said loudly, join the Durian King, so that you will be my Durian King's good sister, and I will give you half of all my durian in the future. Sun Yan's mouth twitched. What the hell is the Durian King? Because Xingchen called himself the Durian King, did he become the Durian King? He also looked at Lingfeng, and it could be seen that Xingchen liked Lingfeng very much, so for Xingchen's sake, recruiting Lingfeng as his subordinate second-generation mecha girl could be accepted, but he certainly didn't have many resources at the moment, and MP resources and modules must be given priority to Xingchen. It depends on what Lingfeng chooses. Xingchen, Lingfeng looked at Xingchen, who was full of enthusiasm, and a hint of apology flashed in her eyes. She was very willing to become Sun Yan's mecha girl, and she also wanted to fight side by side with Xingchen. But she couldn't agree to Xingchen's kindness. I'm sorry, I think I'm willing to give Master a chance. Lingfeng bit her red lips and said timidly, when I was eliminated from the club and was about to go back to the training, it was Master who pulled me out. Although I didn't get any resources, the treatment of the first-generation mecha girl was like this. Later, Po Yu was poached away, and Master didn't let me go to the modification when he was so anxious. Everyone makes mistakes. I don't think he should be sentenced to death for one mistake. Now that I have better skills, I shouldn't give up on him. After Lingfeng finished speaking, she bowed to Sun Yan and Xingchen again and again. Her eyes were bright and firm. It was obviously a decision made after repeated consideration. Xingqian's big blue eyes flashed, and the corners of her mouth curled up. In fact, she had known that Ling Feng had made such a choice. Because Ling Feng and Po Yu are mecha girls with different personalities. Po Yu is profit-seeking, but Ling Feng knows how to be grateful. If Ling Feng is a mecha girl who will turn around and leave after becoming rich, then Sun Yan will not teach her the cornering technique, right? Ling Feng, you. Zhang Laolai raised his head in surprise. He really didn't expect Ling Feng to continue to follow him. How could he be so virtuous? At this moment, he couldn't help but feel a sore nose when he looked at Ling Feng, and tears welled up in his eyes. He had felt the taste of the machine girl leaving, and was ready to accept the blow, but the situation took a turn for the better. Sun Yan glanced at Zhang Laolai, thinking that he should be happy to meet such a good machine girl. You should know that Ling Feng didn't sign a core imprint with Zhang Laolai. He was able to maintain a pure heart in this situation, which shows how good Ling Feng's character is. No, Xingqian suddenly intercepted Ling Feng and Zhang Laolai, with his hands spread out, his face full of seriousness, like an old hen protecting her chicks. Why is it so easy for this idiot? She pointed at Zhang Laolai and said indignantly, before, this idiot looked down on Ling Feng's performance. We can't let him get away with it so easily. Sun Yan didn't know what Xingqian was up to, but since it was his own machine girl's idea, he would definitely support it, so he nodded and said, that's right, Zhang Laolai, it's too easy for you to get Ling Feng's forgiveness. Zhang Laolai stood there blankly. He wanted to promise something, but he felt powerless no matter what he said. It's useless to say anything. Action is the most important thing. It's better to shut up and wait for Sun Yan and Xingqian's judgment. Anyway, no matter what, he has to bear it all. Let me think about it. Xingqian knocked his head, and suddenly his eyes lit up and said, from today on, stupid egg must practice hard. When the skills can match Ling Feng, when can he apply to become Ling Feng's driver? Whether it is finally up to standard will be confirmed by me, Durian King, and my master Durian King. Hey, Zhang Laolai, you speak. Sun Yan glared at Zhang Laolai fiercely. Oh, of course I can, thank you Ling Feng, thank you Xingqian, thank you Sun Yan. Zhang Laolai was so excited that he bowed to everyone around him, including Xu Yuyang and Lu Guang. I will definitely work hard to become a qualified driver. Please ask Brother Su and Xingqian to supervise at any time. He promised with a red face, and was about to raise his hand to salute. As a result, the arm that had just been connected made a crack sound, and the sudden violent movement made it dislocated again. In Zhang Laolai's nutrient solution store, Sun Yan and Xingqian, each holding a box of prize money, and the other holding 2 durians, stared at the 4 people sitting at the table. Zhang Laolai and Ling Feng sat on one side, while Han Si and Po Yu sat opposite. There were 2 other people in the room, namely Xu Yuyang, the owner of the Firefox Club, and the person in charge of the Echo Valley training match. The person in charge was holding an agreement in his hand, which was the one signed by Zhang Laolai and Han Si. Since the agreement reached by Zhang Laolai and Han Si was based on the victory or defeat of the Echo Valley track, the ruling of this agreement was also arbitrated by someone sent by Echo Valley. According to the conditions in the agreement, the final winner is Ling Feng and Zhang Jinbao. Do you have any objections? I do. Han Si raised his hand and said fiercely, the agreement requires Zhang Jinbao and Ling Feng to participate together, but in the end only Ling Feng participated, which does not meet the requirements. Sun Yan gave Han Si an idiot look when he heard this. Xu Yuyang was so angry that he folded his hands and snorted coldly. The person in charge pushed his glasses and said seriously, but as far as I know, Zhang Jinbao came to participate in the competition, but some accidents happened before the competition and he couldn't drive Ling Feng. Moreover, even if there was no accident, Ling Feng, a girl, came to participate in the competition, which was enough to represent Ling Feng and Zhang Jinbao. In summary, the victory of Zhang Jinbao and Ling Feng is completely valid. Han Si's face was pale and hesitant. I don't accept it. The person in charge twitched his mouth. If you don't accept it, just hold it in. He was still rushing back to eat. Han Si's face became even uglier after being retorted. Is your service attitude for the Echo Valley training match like this? I even applied for a card. As he said that, he took out a VIP black card and slammed it on the table with a bang. Oh, you are our distinguished VIP customer. The person in charge nodded, took out a glass jar from his pocket and pushed it to Han Si. Thank you for your support of our Echo Valley track. You will still have a 20% discount on tickets when you participate in the Echo Valley training game in the future. This is the soil of the Echo Valley track, you can take it back and collect it. Han Si. He felt that his fist was about to burst. How about this? The person in charge said lightly. If it doesn't work, let Lingfeng and Poiyue go to the Echo Valley track again, we can do it for free. Han Si was about to say something, but Poiyue couldn't sit still. I give up. She thought it was nothing more than returning to Zhang Laolai, and maybe she could learn skills from him. This Han Si has no use value anymore, so it's better not to have him. Poiyue, you. Han Si stretched out his hand to grab Poiyue, but Poiyue dodged him, and he could only watch Poiyue sign the agreement. It's over, it's completely over. He collapsed on the table as if a bone had been pulled out of his body. If this matter is not done well, Yang Tian will definitely skin him alive. Zhang Laolai, you should feel honored, right? I am your first pilot again. Po Yu walked up to Zhang Laolai with a proud look on her face. She thought Zhang Laolai would greet her with a smile as before, but today Zhang Laolai was particularly indifferent and did not even raise his head. Zhang Laolai, hey, Zhang Laolai. Zhang Laolai ignored Po Yu, but smiled and said to Sun Yan next to him, Sun Yan, Po Yu will be handed over to you from now on. Sun Yan nodded. Po Yu was stunned. Was she sold to Sun Yan by Zhang Laolai? She subconsciously glanced at Sun Yan, the king of Nox. He was young, handsome, and made a lot of money. He was many times better than Zhang Laolai. In an instant, the humiliation of being sold was replaced by joy. How could Zhang Laolai sell her? He found a big daddy for her. She couldn't wait to get close to Sun Yan and put her hands on his plump chest. With a sweet smile on his lips, Master. What horse? Sun Yan rolled his eyes, turned his head and said to Shu Yuyang next to him, this Po Yu will be sent to you to be modified. The money earned from the gladiatorial competition will be 70% and 30% for us. If a driver likes her, we can sell her. Boss Shu grinned and gave a thumbs up, no problem. Modified car, gladiator. Po Yu's face changed. Is Sun Yan going to send her to the black market? Doesn't that mean she will never be able to go on the track? Zhang Laolai, I have been with you for 5 years. Are you just ruining me like this? Po Yu looked at Zhang Laolai pitifully, but Zhang Laolai just raised his head and counted the grids on the ceiling. So she went to ask Han Si again. Han Si, can you spend more money to buy me? Okay, I am so compatible with you. Han Si shook his head dejectedly and smiled bleakly. Where can I find money to buy you? Aren't you a rich second generation? If you beat Ling Feng, I am a rich second generation, and if you lose, I am just a street kid. Po Yu looked at Han Si's eyes, which were even more desperate than hers. She had no hope in her heart and slumped in her seat. Just then, the door of the shop was suddenly knocked. Everyone turned their heads and saw a tall and slender figure walking in. She looked around curiously, and finally her eyes fell on Sun Yan and Xingqian. She smiled and said, Sun Yan, you came to Tianyuan City without telling me, so it was easy for me to find you. What are you doing? It's quite lively. The visitor was none other than Jade 786, whom she had not seen for a few days. Sun Yan and Xingqian had been busy competing in Tianyuan City during this period, and had completely forgotten about the bet, but Jade 786 had not. In order to make a comeback and become the super genius of Sun Yan, she not only practiced cornering skills, but also spent a huge amount of money to buy herself a steering module with good attributes and prepared a secret weapon. As a result, when it was time to go to the Conscience recycling field to find Sun Yan, she found that the recycling field had stopped operating. After asking a bunch of people who might know the situation, she found out that Sun Yan and Xingqian did not run away, but went to Tianyuan City to participate in the competition. So she found Tianyuan City all the way and even watched a training match in Echo Valley. Sun Yan and Xingqian still easily won the first place in the Echo Valley training match, which further strengthened her idea. Sun Yan, must get it. Is it you? Xingqian was originally smiling at Ling Feng, but the moment she saw Yu 786, her silly smile turned into a fake smile, and the durian in her hand was immediately put behind her back. She would not share the precious durian with a mecha girl like U-786. Xingqian, long time no see. U-786 showed a gentle smile. In terms of fake smile, she is still stronger, and she looks natural and unpretentious. If you are not familiar with her, you may have a good impression of her because of this smile. YU-786, it seems that you are ready. Sun Yan looked up and down at YU-786, and the attributes of YU-786 gradually emerged in his eyes. Drift, 62 points. Acceleration, 68 points. Cornering, 70 points. Charge, 51 points. Stability, 43 points. Anti-collision, 41 points. Endurance, 62 points. Compared to before, the attributes of YU-786 have changed significantly. The cornering has increased from 57 points to 70 points, and other attributes have decreased, especially the anti-collision and stability have almost decreased by 10 points. It can be seen that YU-786 has definitely installed a very targeted steering module. The girl can't install the module by herself, but in the absence of a driver, she can go to a special modification shop to ask the staff to help replace the module. Generally, this kind of modification shop and module shop are connected together, similar to the relationship between a clothing store and a fitting room in a clothing store. Tisk tisk, it seems that this YU-786 is well prepared. Sun Yan narrowed his eyes and touched his chin. The situation suddenly became a little unfavorable. Now Xingqian's drift is 39 points, and the cornering is 65 points, both of which are behind YU-786 in all aspects. He immediately added 11 megapixels points obtained from the first place in the Echo Valley track to Xingqian's drift attribute, and the drift attribute became 50 points, but even so there is still a gap. So now Xingqian can only compete with YU-786 in speed and experience. But Xingqian has always been silly, and it seems that she has not learned his cornering technique. When Lingfeng was learning the technique, she was cheering and eating durian beside him, and Xingqian also said that she wanted to be a stupid robot girl. He is now a little unsure whether Xingqian can rely on technology to make up for the gap in attributes with U-786. He subconsciously glanced at Xingqian. The little girl was originally staring at YU-786 with righteousness. After noticing his gaze, she turned her head and immediately showed a bright and confident smile on her fair face. Her eyes were shining and her eyebrows were curved. Although she didn't say anything, she had conveyed the belief that she would win. The moment he saw this smile, Sun Yan couldn't help but touch his nose. He was really getting older and older. Didn't he promise to trust his own pilot? Xingqian was so confident. He shouldn't worry about Xingqian, but should give her an encouraging and affirmative look at this time. Besides, even if U-786 won, so what? It's just a second-time pilot, just wait to sit on the bench. Thinking of this, Sun Yan immediately had no worries and smiled at Xingqian. Brother Sun Yan, who is this? Boss Shu next to him asked curiously. Before Sun Yan spoke, Xingqian had already stood up. She came to compete with me. As long as she wins, she can become the second-time pilot of the master. As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression became strange. Competing with Xingqian and Sun Yan. Is she crazy? Xu Yuyang looked at YU-786 with amazement. Could this be a master? Only compete with me. Xingqian knew that everyone had misunderstood her meaning, and said in a serious tone, unmanned driving can compete with me in turning, and can't hit the guardrail. The one who reaches the finish line in the shortest time is the winner. Quote. So that's how it is, everyone nodded. But even so, this girl named YU-786 is very courageous. It just so happens that there is a ready-made curve at the abandoned dock. If it doesn't meet your requirements, I can ask the workers to drive the tower crane to rearrange the track. Will this be too much trouble for Brother Shu? Sun Yan asked. What's the trouble? It's just a piece of cake. Quote. In the evening, the curve of the abandoned dock has been arranged. Originally, this curve was used by Xu Yuyang and Lu Guang to practice turning, but since Lu Guang could not go on the track, it has been a bit abandoned. It is only used occasionally when underground black market competitions are held. Now it has been replanned according to the competition requirements of Xingchen and U-786. The track, with a total length of only 5 kilometers, is full of curves, and there is almost no straight line. Whether it is the mecha girl or the driver present, they feel scalp tingling when they see this curve. Isn't this 10,000 times more perverted than the original mecha girl driving assessment? U-786 secretly observed Xingchen's expression. Before coming to find Sun Yan and Xingchen, she made up her mind she wanted to set up a track full of curves to compete with Xingchen, so that the modules she bought could play the most effective role. After the curves were arranged, she thought she could see a trace of panic on Xingchen's face, but the other party always looked calm. Is Xingchen not afraid of these curves at all? Is it trust in her own skills or blind self-confidence? She couldn't figure out the reason, but she was secretly alert in her heart. Anyway, she still has a secret weapon. Even if something unexpected happens, she can just activate the secret weapon. I am the owner of the Firefox Club and have some power in this area. Since you are using my training track, I will arbitrate your agreement. Is that okay? Before the game started, Xu Yuyong reread the agreement signed by YU-786, Sun Yan and Xingchen. After both parties expressed no objection, Xu Yuyong announced the start of the game. Please go to the starting point and prepare for the start. Since the track is very narrow, you need to start 30 seconds apart. According to the agreement, you must not collide with the track. The party that crosses the finish line with the shortest time is the winner. Quote. Xingchen and YU-786 took their positions on the track. As the examinee, U-786 started first. Before the start, she walked to Xingchen and stretched out her hand, smiling and said, Xingchen sister, we will be a family from now on, we must take care of each other. Xingchen crossed her arms and rolled her eyes, sneering twice, Auntie, you have to beat me first. U-786. The car was in a mess, but the driver was still in the car. U-786 was very ruthless and directly unfolded the car body. She swore in her heart. After becoming Sun Yan's pilot, she will let Xingchen feel the taste of being banished to the cold palace. Xingchen also unfolded the car body, revealing a bright silver streamlined body. Judging from the appearance of the car body, U-786 has already lost a section. As Xu Yuyong's starting gun sounded, U-786 also jumped out with a bang. The first bend was very beautiful for the Jade-786. Not only did it make perfect use of the width of the track and the length of the bend, but it also drifted a little on the gravel road of the dock. However, the difficulty of this bend was not very high, and it was hard to tell whether it was real or fake. The second bend was a hairpin bend, and the tires of the Jade 786 made a squeak sound, and the drift was actually used. Sun Yan looked at the drift track of the Jade 786 and nodded secretly. Although the calculation of the entry and exit points was a piece of shit, the speed was relatively slow after all, so it was still able to drift through. The Jade 786 really put a lot of effort into today's game. The Jade 786 galloping in the bend was also full of pride. That's the feeling. Perhaps it was the stimulation of Xingchen. Her feel was very good today, and she performed exceptionally well in every bend. If she could finish the track at this speed, what could Xingchen do to compare with her? For today's competition, she also went to the Decepticon driving school in Zhongcheng City to retrieve Xingchen's video of cornering. At that time, it took Xingchen 2 minutes to complete the chain of bends, but before she came to Tianyuan City to find Sun Yan and Xingchen, she could complete the chain C-type bend test in the driving school within 1 minute. Xingchen will lose today. Seeing that U-786 was so tough, everyone couldn't help but look at the other party, Xingchen, with worry. At this moment, Xingchen had already started the car, and the engine was trembling under her control. As the countdown was 10 seconds, the front window rolled down and threw out a few pieces of durian peel from it. Oh, it seems that Xingchen is not nervous at all, Xu Yuyong said with a smile. Yes, Xingchen is still eating durian. Ling Feng was full of admiration. If she were in Xingchen's position now, she would definitely be under a lot of pressure. Sun Yan, it's good to eat more durian, the king of fruits, eating too much nourishes the brain. But looking at Xingchen's state of fully stepping on the accelerator, is he planning to launch? Sun Yan narrowed her eyes. The first bend was less than 50 meters away from the starting point. With Xingchen's acceleration attribute, she would reach a very high starting speed by launching a catapult. Could she control herself? Pop! The signal gun sounded, and the roar of the engine also exploded, affecting the hearts of everyone around. Xingqian held a durian in her mouth, her eyes calm, and passed the first bend smoothly. The first bend was the easiest, with a wide road and gentle bends. You didn't need to brake, as long as you calculated the back entry point to pass. The second bend began to become more difficult, and Xingqian silently felt the support of the suspension and the downforce from the rear wing. Jade 786, the slower the bend, the more stable it is. She muttered to herself, glancing at the slow-moving Jade 786 in the distance. The angle of entry is very small. In the past, Sun Yan would step on the brakes hard before entering such a curve to reduce the speed in a short time. This requires calculating the braking point in advance. If the braking point is early, the exit speed will be much slower. If the braking point is late, the car body will easily lose control. If it is a master, the braking point should be chosen here. At a certain moment approaching the curve, Xingqian's eyes were bright, and she chose the braking point according to her inner feeling. Her speed was not slow. The downforce provided by the air passing through the rear wing made her four tires pressed firmly on the road. The rear of the car swung out a beautiful arc. At the moment of exiting the curve, the front of the car had only a slight angle flaw. As she adjusted the angle, the whole car body immediately corrected and prepared to enter the next curve. Xingqian is amazing. Ling Feng looked at the silver girl sliding freely in the curve with shining eyes. As Sun Yan's half-day apprentice, Ling Feng knew very well how much gold content Xingqian had to do this. She thought Xingqian didn't like to learn these skills, but she didn't expect that she didn't want to learn them, but she knew them at all. Come to think of it, as Sun Yan's first pilot girl, how could she not learn some skills from Sun Yan? Brother Sun Yan, it seems that your pilot girl is also very hardworking in training. Xu Yuyang was full of admiration. This kind of pilot girl who is talented, hardworking and has a good personality is the most likable. Yes, it would be better if Xingqian didn't always feed Lu Guang with durian. Recently, when Lu Guang unfolds, he can always smell a faint smell of durian when he sits in it. But Sun Yan, the person involved, was confused. Where is the stupid mecha girl? He swore that he never taught Xingqian as he did Ling Feng. It's not that he favors one over the other, but mainly because he thinks that Xingqian is the first to start and he is the one driving, so there is no need for her to go into battle alone like Ling Feng, right? Thinking that Xingqian usually calls herself a genius mecha girl. Is she really a genius? While U-786 was still immersed in complacency, he didn't realize that the roar of the engine was approaching behind him. At first, U-786 didn't care, because there were a lot of paper clip areas on this track. Sometimes she might be very close to Xingqian who started later, but in fact she had already left Xingqian far behind on the track. But soon she found something wrong. If Xingqian was on the parallel track, she should be able to see Xingqian. As the engine sound got closer, she hadn't seen Xingqian for a long time. For some reason, U-786 looked up at the rearview mirror, and then a chill ran down her head and toes. Xingqian had bitten behind her without knowing when, and was still approaching. This means that Xingqian's cornering speed is much faster than hers. Why? U-786 gritted her teeth. Is this still the XC-99 that crashed from head to tail in the debut? She watched Xingqian pass a hairpin perfectly, not as fast as when Sun Yan was driving, but faster than her. In the blink of an eye, Xingqian had come to her side. U-786, I admit that you are very hardworking, strong, and rich. Xingqian stared at the road ahead, not looking at U-786, but the voice was clearly transmitted to U-786's ears. But these are meaningless. I will tell you today that Master is a unique treasure. At the U-shaped bend in front, Xingqian swung the joystick, and the car body suddenly rotated 180 degrees and confronted U-786 from a distance. Squeak. The tires rubbed against the ground wildly, sparking sparks. In the black smoke, U-786 saw the flames in Xingqian's eyes. She saw Xingqian's proud head raised, and heard her say word by word. You abandoned him once, and you will regret it for the rest of your life. The car body cut into the middle of the U-shaped bend sideways, and Xingqian gradually turned the car body according to the rhythm of the tire's grip recovery, and straightened it out the moment it left the bend. J-shaped turn. Sun Yan only used it once, and Xingqian reproduced it. Although the curve she just faced was not as difficult as the one Sun Yan faced before. Although her speed was not as fast as when Sun Yan was driving. But it still did not affect her whole body, radiating the brilliance of genius. In the stands, Sun Yan was stunned when he saw the J-shaped turn. Everyone around him was envious and admiring. As expected of you, brother Sun Yan, you can teach such a difficult operation. Yes, Xingqian is not easy to teach at first glance, which shows that Sun Yan is a very patient person. Sun Yan ran past with 1,000 heads singing the lasso. He really didn't teach Xingqian this technique. He only performed it for Xingqian once. This thing also has a very cute nickname called Kiss of Death. Because the risk factor is extremely high, if you don't pay attention, the car may lose control and may even collide with other cars directly. Needless to say, when this technology is used, U-786's heart should be broken into pieces. However, Sun Yan still underestimated U-786's determination to become his mecha girl. The tail wing of YU-786, which had fallen behind Xingqian, suddenly lifted up, and 4 high-tech exhaust ports popped out from the rear hood, 2 of which were facing the back and 2 facing the side. As a black market boss, Xu Yuyang is familiar with this stuff. He frowned and squeezed the railing, muttering, "This is illegal modification." The car was in a state of panic, but the car was still in a state of panic. The U-786 rushed straight into the curve without any intention of slowing down. At the moment when it was about to hit the guardrail, the jet outlet on the rear hood made a muffled bang sound, and the strong airflow shook the container that served as the guardrail. The U-786 also used this thrust to forcibly correct the body. Facing the S-shaped continuous curve, the jet device was also applicable. The jet outlets on the left and right sides corrected the body at the right time. It can be seen that after this illegal modification, the U-786 itself has done a lot of practical operations. Okay, this fool. Sun Yan slapped the railing, very angry. Illegal modification will damage the body of the machine girl. He was just wondering why YU-786, who has such an open personality, is wrapped up so tightly today. It seems that she is afraid of being discovered, so Xingqian is prepared in advance. Although, the agreement does not say that illegal modification is not allowed. Xu Yuyang took out the agreement and confirmed it again and again, and said helplessly, "But I really didn't expect that this machine girl would have such extreme ideas. Even if she wins by illegal modification and becomes your second machine girl, you probably won't like her, right?" Hee, even if she wins by modification, I won't like her. Sun Yan snorted coldly, crossing his arms. Now YU-786 is relying on illegal modification to quickly close the distance between him and Xingqian. If Xingqian is defeated by YU-786, he will definitely suffer a big blow, right? U-786 also knows that using illegal modification is shameful. But so what? She stared at Xingqian's taillights. As long as I become Sun Yan's secondary mecha girl, I have 100 ways to make Sun Yan focus all his energy on me. I can accept any damage to the mecha. She also tried her best. Illegal modification is extremely painful, including the moment of using illegal modification. This is because illegal modification is equivalent to forcibly docking incompatible foreign objects into the body for mecha girls. Imagine inserting a pair of bloody mechanical arms into the flesh. Although these mechanical arms can be used, isn't it a torture for the flesh every time they run? The only advantage of mecha girls is that after illegal modification, the body can gradually recover. However, generally, mecha girls who have been illegally modified are almost unwilling to modify unless they have the opportunity to win the regular competition. Cheating is addictive, and enduring a little pain is nothing. Relying on the convenience provided by illegal modification, U-786 soon became equal to Xingqian. Xingqian, I'll show you my determination. Even if I have to endure the pain of modification, I will become Sun Yan's mecha girl. Bah! Xingqian glanced at YU-786 with disdain. You just covet my master's body, draw your sword. By the way, she also took out 2 durian peels and threw them at U-786's windshield. U-786 was furious, but she also knew that it was meaningless to argue with Xingqian at this time, so she focused her attention on the track. After the two chased each other and fought for several tracks, although Xingqian tried his best to block the position, U-786 still succeeded in overtaking. Illegal modification is not a vegetarian thing. It has great disadvantages, but the improvement it brings is also very terrifying. Compared with the special modules that are so expensive that people are discouraged, modification only costs hundreds of thousands or even tens of thousands to achieve the effect of special modules, and may even be better than special modules. After overtaking Xingqian, U-786 breathed a sigh of relief. Although this did not mean that Xingqian would definitely win, it was at least a good start, and it also suppressed Xingqian in terms of momentum. Ah, Xingqian was overtaken. Ling Feng clasped his hands together in front of his chest, his face full of worry, and silently prayed for Xingqian in his heart. She could feel that this seemingly just a test match was very important to Xingqian. Xingqian must be defending something very important to her. Seeing Xingqian being overtaken by YU-786, Sun Yan's eyes also showed a hint of tension, and he clenched his fist unconsciously. It's not that he was afraid of what would happen if Xingqian lost, but he was afraid that this matter would become a grudge in Xingqian's heart. Will Xingqian lose? Facing the absolute speed suppression brought by illegal modification, Xingqian in the cab raised his head. She thought of her first show, when she gritted her teeth and tried her best to reach the finish line even if her head was broken and bloody. She thought of the time when she dragged her wounded body down the auction stage. Other girls were greeted with flowers and applause, but she was greeted with only indifference and mocking eyes. She thought of the time when she was cowering in the warehouse. The cold wind outside hit the window, and the mecha girl beside her watched a game video in despair, and then extracted the intelligent core. She should have been the one who was abandoned and sent back to the furnace. Erase consciousness and say goodbye to this world completely, even if it is only less than 72 hours in this world. It was the master who pulled her up from the abyss and gave her a second life. Without the master, there would be no Xingqian flying on the track now. In any case, she didn't want to embarrass Sun Yan. What qualifications does the mecha girl who once abandoned Sun Yan have to stand in front of her master again? Never allow it. Never allow it. Xingqian widened her eyes and roared. Fierce and irritable emotions filled her heart, and also made her engine emit a strange sound like a beast's roar. Emotions can affect the game state of the mecha girl. Lu Guang will stand up again with the fear in his heart, and Ling Feng can also carry everyone's hope to defeat Po Yu with the assistance of the driver. On the special track full of curves, Xingqian's speed was not fast. But at this moment, a pair of silver light wings gradually emerged from the wings of her car body, extending backward to the rear of the car, spreading left and right like a young eagle's wings. At this moment, Xingqian's speed increased rapidly, and she passed through the hairpin bend in front of her like lightning. Unfortunately, it was too far away, and Sun Yan could not see Xingqian's panel, otherwise he would be surprised that there was a red flashing font of +15 behind Xingqian's curve attribute. And at this moment, Xingqian's speed continued to climb. What is this? Sun Yan was stunned, rubbed his eyes, and made sure that he was not dazzled. This is the overclocking state. Xu Yuyang crossed his arms and stared at the stars on the track with a serious face. When the emotions of the pilot girl reach the extreme, there is a very small probability that she will enter the overclocking state. In this state, the overall quality of the pilot girl will be temporarily improved, so as to complete the operation that was originally almost impossible to complete. Overclocking, Sun Yan murmured. I have never heard of it. It's normal that I haven't heard of it, because the probability is too small. Xu Yuyang spread his hands. Many old drivers and pilot girls don't know this concept, only those who have been in the provincial track for many years and pilot girls know it. I have heard of it before, and I thought it was just a legend until I witnessed it with my own eyes today. Has no other girl overclocked before? Yes, Xu Yuyang recalled. In the past, there was a girl overclocking on the second national track, the Snowy Trail. At that time, the girl was taking her driver across the ice field. Her driver was almost frozen to death. In order to finish the race as soon as possible and save the driver's life, the girl overclocked. It took less than half an hour to finish the race with an hour left. Sun Yan couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he heard that the driver was almost frozen to death. How outrageous is the national track! No wonder Zhang Laolai said that those top racers were as strong as bulls. If you really want to challenge the track in such an extreme environment, you really can't do it without a good physique. What happened later? Later, the driver froze to death, and the girl never appeared again. Many people analyzed that the girl was overclocked, and some said it was a special module. My master said that the girl was overclocked, but someone deliberately covered up the information. As for where the girl went later, it's terrifying to think about it. Xu Yuyang quickly hugged Lu Guang next to him, showing a fearful and fragile expression. It's so scary. Master, don't be afraid, be good, I'm here. Poor Lu Guang was still sitting in a wheelchair, but she had to hug Xu Yuyang like a sister, patting Xu Yuyang on the back to comfort him. Sun Yan. On the track, U-786 was dumbfounded when she saw Xingqian catching up again. What are those light wings? Special modules. U-786 gritted his teeth. He didn't expect Sun Yan to be so rich and dote on Xingqian so much. The special modules have all been bought. If she hadn't left Sun Yan, she would have the special modules now. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got, and the more jealous she became, but she couldn't stop Xingqian from overtaking her. At the last bend before the finish line, the distance between Xingqian and Yu-786 could only be calculated in centimeters. U-786 knew she had already lost. Even if Xingqian didn't overtake her in such a short distance, she couldn't pull away by 30 seconds. She glanced in the rearview mirror, where she could only see less than half of Xingqian's body. As a mecha girl, she realized that Xingqian behind her was ready to overtake her at the last bend. But, don't even think about overtaking. U-786 lowered her eyes. Come, at least she has to fight for her life on the track. In order to force Xingqian, U-786 delayed braking at the moment of entering the last corner. She had to take the risk of combining cornering and illegally modified jet devices. This approach would bring a lot of uncertainties, and she didn't have the ability to make good calculations. The car body was likely to lose control. Now her and Xingqian's cornering speeds have reached 300 or more. Once the car loses control at this speed, the whole car body will fly out. You want to force me to give up by delaying the breaking point. Xingqian puffed up his cheeks, and tried to touch the durian with his backhand but didn't touch it. He could only enter the corner with Yu-786 almost side by side with anger. The last corner is a continuous hairpin bend, first to the left and then to the right. Because Yu-786 deliberately delayed braking, Xingqian also delayed, and her cornering speed was still higher than U-786. The inertia caused by the turn made Xingqian's rear wheels approach U-786. At the closest moment, the tires of the two mechas even scraped and sparked. Everyone in the stands watched this scene nervously. If the two mechas collided at this speed and then continued to hit the guardrail, it would not be just an accident. Fortunately, the collision did not happen. Xingqian had already cut into the second right turn and had to rely on a faster speed to seize the priority exit position. U-786 took a deep breath. This was her last chance. She now had only two choices. Either she stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, resulting in a loss of control and crashing into the guardrail, or she used the jet device to forcibly correct the body of the car and seize the exit position, but at this moment Xingqian had blocked all her routes like a roadblock. The moment she crossed with Xingqian, she saw the cold front in Xingqian's eyes. Although Xingqian said nothing, U-786 still read a sentence from his eyes. Do you dare to hit? The two of them were in a state of panic, but the situation was very complicated. Xingqian glanced at U-786. Let me see how determined you are to become a master mecha girl. Under the pressure of that look, U-786 retreated. The opponent was a monster that had only suffered some skin injuries from the first show. If it weren't for its excellent speed, it would even be thought to be a confrontational mecha girl. She knew her own weight. If she collided with Xingqian now, Xingqian would at most faint, and she would definitely fall apart. She didn't have to sacrifice her life to become Sun Yan's mecha girl. U-786 gave up using the jet device to seize the exit position. She was no match for Xingqian in the last 200 meters of the straight line, and was instantly left behind by dozens of meters. We won. Sun Yan in the stands breathed a sigh of relief. Ling Feng jumped up with joy. Brother Sun Yan, you have a good pilot girl. Don't let her down in the future. Xu Yuyang's mouth curled up. Xingqian was really one of the best pilot girls he had ever seen in all aspects. That's right, she is the Durian King. Sun Yan smiled. At this moment, something strange happened. U-786, who should have stopped after crossing the finish line, did not stop. The jet device behind her made a clicking sound, and her car body rushed forward almost out of control, faster and faster. Oh no, this pilot girl's illegal modification broke down. Xu Yuyong looked at the direction of the finish line. I saw that U-786 was crashing into a high wall at the end of the dock. Behind the high wall was a factory. This wall was a load-bearing wall and was quite thick. If YU-786 continued to accelerate and crash into it, the consequences would be disastrous. Everyone was in the stands. The only one who could help U-786 was Xingqian near the finish line. At this moment, U-786 was already panicking. She wanted to brake and stop frantically, but the car body did not obey her. Instead, the jet device behind her was running uncontrollably, making her speed faster and faster. If she had not slowed down when she was close to the finish line, she would probably have crashed into the high wall now. This is one of the hidden dangers of illegal modification. That is, the car body has a probability of losing control. The more modifications the girl has, the more likely it is to have problems. It is also related to the frequency of use of illegal modifications. Just now on the track, she used the jet device to adjust the car body to turn almost all the last two-thirds of the curves. The frequency of use was too high, which also induced the loss of control. Help! Looking at the increasingly high walls, Jade 786 cried desperately with tears in her eyes. At this moment, a thunderous engine sound suddenly sounded behind her, and the next second a silver stream of light had surpassed her car body. It was Xingqian. Jade 786's heart was shocked. She stared blankly at Xingqian leaning over. Xingqian first maintained a speed similar to that of Jade 786. As her car body gradually blocked Jade 786, her speed gradually decreased. The tires rubbed against the ground wildly, making sharp explosions and bringing terrifying friction. Jade 786's speed was getting slower and slower. Less than 5 meters away from the high wall, the two mechas stopped completely. Xingqian stopped the deployment, holding her waist with a grin, and kept shouting, "Ouch, ouch," in her mouth. Jade 786 ran out of battery life and automatically stopped the deployment mode. She fell to the cold ground, and her pale face was still in shock. Xingqian. Why are you? No reason. Xingqian stretched, took out a durian and smashed it with his forehead. YU-786, it's true that I don't like you, but this doesn't conflict with my not wanting to see a mecha girl die in front of me. But, hey, U-786. Xingqian interrupted YU-786 and leaned over to look at her. Promise me, don't be a bad mecha girl anymore, choose a master you like, stay with him, support each other, work hard together, there will always be a chance to go on the track, so that even if you lose, when you go home and drink boiled water with the TV in your arms, the water will be sweet. U-786 stared at Xingqian in a daze. Xingqian walked up to YU-786 and put the durian skin she had just peeled on YU-786 ahead. She stepped back 2 steps, looked up and down at YU-786, and a satisfied smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Goodbye, she waved, turned around, and hopped away. In the distance, Sun Yan was already waiting for her at the finish line. Masita. Xingqian dived into Sun Yan's arms, rubbing her pretty face against his chest. Hee, Masita, I. Before she could ask Sun Yan for credit, Sun Yan grabbed her ear and lifted it up. Ouch, it hurts. Master, I was wrong. You still know you were wrong. Sun Yan had a gloomy face, pinched Xingqian's soft face with his other hand, and twisted his left and right hands together. Who asked you to stop U-786? Do you know it's dangerous? What if she takes you and hits the wall together? I can withstand collisions. Ouch. Resistant to collisions. Come and show me how resistant you are to collisions. Master, you bully me. I won the game and you didn't praise me. You still want me to praise you. Go back and wait to be spanked. Ling Feng and Lu Guang laughed at Xingqian who was being beaten. Xu Yuyong hurried up to persuade him. Brother Sun Yan, Xingqian is kind-hearted, which is a good thing. It's better than being cold and heartless, right? And isn't she fine? I think she is also a person who is sensible in doing things. Forget it, forget it. U-786 watched this scene from a distance, her eyes full of envy, but soon became gloomy. What is lost after all, no matter what, it can't be returned. At this moment, she finally understood this truth. Whether it is the driver or the girl, they have to pay for their own choices. She turned her back and lowered her head and left alone. She casually dismantled the modification and threw it on the beach at the pier. At this moment, it seemed that her whole body was much more relaxed. Tianyuan City, a villa. Brother Yang, please, give me another chance. This time it was really just an accident. Brother Yang. On the phone, Han Sis' voice was as noisy as a crow. It also made the young man sitting on the sofa look disgusted and impatient. He hung up the phone with a snap, leaned on the sofa and looked at the ceiling, his eyes cold. Sure enough, the minions found randomly are not very reliable, they can't do such a small thing well. Boss, this is the information you want. A woman who looks like a secretary presented the information. The young man glanced at the information and asked with a smile, Sun Yan, the king of Nox. Interesting, do you think he will come to our club? It's uncertain. The secretary shook his head. He doesn't seem to plan to join any club, and he has a close relationship with Xu Ziliang. According to investigations, Han Si and Po Yu didn't win because Ling Feng was specially trained by him. This Sun Yan is a genius. He can research so many technologies by himself. It would be a pity if he can't be recruited to our club. What do you mean? Recently, our club also has an ace who is preparing for the provincial competition. Yes, that's the one named Li Yaochen. Let him block Sun Yan and Zhang Laolai. The secretary showed a constipated look when he heard this. Boss, are you sure you want Li Yaochen to go? I'm afraid of his weird personality. What are you afraid of? The young man waved his hand and said boredly, Li Yaochen has a weird personality, but he will definitely do whatever you ask him to do. By the way, is there any news from VVC? Yes, boss, VVC's ace Li Yang held a press conference and announced that he has made preparations for the Greven Desert Circuit and is sure to win the championship this time. The young man sneered, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Then let's see who is the champion. The driver was very busy. Hey, Shifeng, the boss asked us to block a new driver in the advanced race. What do you think about this? On the busy street, a young man with a fair and handsome face and black functional style stopped and stared at his phone. Next to him was a very small robot girl with silver eyes and gray hair. She looked like a delicate doll in a dark fairy tale. Master, as a senior, we shouldn't do such a despicable thing. The robot girl named Shifeng said expressionlessly. But we have to do the boss's task. Li Yaochen's stunned face showed a trace of embarrassment. Master, you can tell him in advance, so it will be fair and just. That makes sense. Tell him all the ways we are going to target him, so that he can prepare in advance. Shifeng, you are such a genius. Oh, Master, you are also a genius. One man and one girl held hands, with the same expressionless faces, looking at each other, but with a sense of mutual appreciation. Li Yaochen nodded. Then it's decided. Hey, Master, look. Shifeng raised her hand and pointed to a nearby store. The pink decoration exuded a charming atmosphere. It was a couple-themed hotel. She turned her head to look at Li Yaochen and held Li Yaochen's hand. I thought about it. But wasn't it just this morning? I thought about it. Shifeng looked up at Li Yaochen blankly, her mouth pursed, and just a few words, is it okay? No problem. Li Yaochen skillfully took out a bag of Luwei Dewang pills and poured it into his mouth, holding Shifeng's hand and walking into the hotel. Isn't it the responsibility and obligation of a pilot to do his best to fulfill the requirements of his own mecha girl? It's a duty. It's been a week since Xingqian and YU 786 competed. During this period, Sun Yan took Xingqian to Lu Guang's class every day, and carried out physical training according to the plan made by Zhang Laolai. In the middle, he also took time to run a training match to get 15 megapixels points. Now there are 19 megapixels points left, and he hasn't decided which attributes to strengthen Xingqian for the time being. Now all the attributes of Xingqian have reached more than 50 without the addition of modules. 5 megapixels points can improve one attribute, and the 3 attributes provided by these 19 megapixels points don't seem to have much improvement no matter what attribute they are added to. I'm exhausted. Sun Yan looked at the back of Xingqian running in front of him, and finally couldn't help but stop and hold his knees to catch his breath. He gets up at 6 in the morning to run every day. At first, he only ran 5 kilometers, which he found easy. Later, he increased the distance by 5 kilometers every day. Now he has to run 15 kilometers in the morning and try to finish it within an hour. Who can bear this? Even One Punch Man doesn't have such high requirements, right? Oh, master, you can't do it. Xingqian heard the movement behind him and ran back on the spot, looking at Sun Yan with a playful face. Tisk tisk, is master the kind of small-time pilot who can't even outrun his own mecha girl? He got tired after running for a while, and he can't last at all. Sun Yan's eyes went dark, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. How can a normal human run faster than a mecha girl? When Xingqian said he wanted to run with him, he was very excited. After all, it was summer now, and everyone only wore a vest and shorts when running. The tight vest would stick to the skin after sweating, and Xingqian was the kind of petite but very well-proportioned figure. Wouldn't it be? In short, this was his motivation for running. What was the result? No matter how hard Xingqian ran, he didn't sweat a drop. What kind of abnormal physique is this? It feels just like a normal girl's skin, soft, smooth and fragrant. Sun Yan still couldn't understand this magical creature, the robot girl. No more running, let me rest for a while. Sun Yan sat down on the ground. The weather was getting hotter and hotter. Even if he did nothing, sweat would flow down his cheeks like a waterfall. More haste, less speed. Even if you are exercising, you have to proceed step by step. He found a reason for himself, thinking that he would have to change his running time to the evening in the future, otherwise he would die of dehydration sooner or later. Masita, do you want some durian? Xingqian opened the durian with his head as usual, took out the largest and fullest one and handed it to Sun Yan. No, I've already eaten it this morning. Sun Yan tilted his head. Durian is delicious, but it's greasy if you eat too much. It's too sweet. Only Xingqian can bear to eat it as a meal. No. But the strange thing is that no matter how Xingqian eats, there is no strong smell on her body and in her mouth. Maybe the mecha girl has the ability to automatically purify the smell. Then, master, what do you want to drink? I'll buy it for you. Xingqian squatted beside Sun Yan and looked at Sun Yan's profile quietly. The sunlight shone through the gaps in the leaves, and dots of light fell on Sun Yan's face. Xingqian pursed her lips and her pretty face blushed slightly. The upset, Masita, lost his usual serious look, but he looked even more lovely. But how can I express such feelings to Masita? Racing skills are easy to learn, but who can I learn these from? What if I express it and Sun Yan refuses? For example, I only think you are my mecha girl. I have never had this idea, it's so sudden, it is impossible for mecha girls and humans to be together, how can you have such an idea, Xingqian, I really misjudged you. I treat you as the first pilot girl, but you are greedy for my body, and so on. When Xingqian thought of these, she was full of entanglements, and the occasional courage turned into timidity. If she said nothing, at least she could maintain the current relationship. She could rush into Sun Yan's room unscrupulously, sneak into Sun Yan's quilt when she was sleeping at night, and pick up a tissue to help Sun Yan wipe his mouth after dinner. Perhaps, this is the safest way to deal with it. Neither of them spoke, and there was only the breeze and cicadas on the forest runway. Sun Yan didn't know what Xingqian was thinking with a frown on her face. Maybe the pilot girl also had her own troubles. Masita, Boss Shu said that after training today, everyone will go to the hot spring together. Do you want to go? In his previous life, Sun Yan was a serious social insulator. His first reaction to hearing all kinds of social events was not to go. Now he also wanted to say no, but a string suddenly popped up in his mind. Hot spring. Xingqian is going too. Hot spring equals swimsuit equals Xingqian is wearing a cute swimsuit equals he can see. What if it's a private bath? Sun Yan wiped the sweat from the corner of his mouth, and an evil smile appeared on his face. The innocent Xingqian must not understand anything, and then, he. Master, you are laughing so obscenely. Xingqian poked Sun Yan's face. Ahem, is there? You must have seen it wrong. I'm such a serious person. So master, are we going? Xingqian took out his mobile phone and shook it. Lu Guang is still waiting for my reply. Go, why not? Sun Yan agreed. Then Master, you're training. Sun Yan stood up from the ground with a somersault. I'll run now. Didn't you say that haste makes waste? Xingqian blinked his big eyes. Haha, haste makes waste, that's all bullshit. Sun Yan pointed at the tree-lined road ahead with a disdainful look on his face, grinning. Just 15 kilometers is enough, those who can't finish it are just dogs. At this moment, his body was full of strength, and he continued to rush forward without saying a word. Xingqian looked at Sun Yan's back and laughed, and followed him. Master, wait for me. The night was a long time ago, but the weather was very good. At night, under the leadership of Xu Yuyang, except for Zhang Laolai who was still atonement. Xu Yuyang, Lu Guang, Sun Yan, Xingqian and Ling Feng, 5 people came to the Mingxiang Natural Hot Spring in Tianyuan City. When he saw the antique and luxurious decoration, Sun Yan was already excited. If there is no private bath in such a hot spring, it would be unreasonable, right? This hot spring is very famous here. Everyone has been training hard recently. Let's go in and enjoy it. I will cover all the expenses inside. Xu Yuyang waved his hand, which was quite generous. He was obviously a frequent visitor here. After entering the store, 2 waiters in skirts immediately greeted him. Hey, Boss Xu, you're here to soak in the hot spring again. The lady boss at the counter smiled and said, did you bring friends today? Yes. Xu Yuyang calmly approached the lady boss, leaving Sun Yan and others aside. Don't use the hot spring today, as the situation is special. Xu Yuyang blushed and said in a low voice, it's not good for friends to know. I still have to maintain my image. The lady boss immediately showed a look of, I understand you, when she heard it. Don't worry, I said there's no more hot spring today. I promise I won't embarrass you. Xu Yuyang looked at the lady boss gratefully, I'll bring Lu Guang to take care of your business next time. Hee, okay. After explaining to the lady boss, Xu Yuyang retreated seriously. Lu Guang grabbed Xu Yuyang's hand and asked subconsciously, Master, is it also private today? Ahem, private, yes, the lady boss said there's no more. Xu Yuyang quickly interrupted Lu Guang. Guests, we don't have any private baths now. We can only arrange 2 medium-sized springs for you, one for men and the other for women. The moment he heard this, the smile on Sun Yan's face gradually disappeared. Doesn't this mean that he and Xu Yuyang will be bathing together, and Xingqian, Lu Guang and Ling Feng will be together? The picture in front of him gradually lost its color and turned gray. Sun Yan laughed bitterly. Haha, maybe his heart was born to be broken. 15 minutes later, in the hot spring, Sun Yan and Xu Yuyang sat opposite each other, with a plate floating in front of them, with snacks and drinks on it, but neither of them had the heart to eat or drink. Brother Sun Yan, why do you feel that you are in a bad mood today? Xu Yuyang glanced at Sun Yan and asked suddenly. Ah, is that so? Maybe you are too tired. Sun Yan said absent-mindedly. He thought to himself, what is Xingqian doing now? She should be wearing a bathrobe, half-exposed shoulders, with a pretty face flushed, leaning against a stone and soaking in the water in a daze, or playing and joking with Ling Feng and Lu Guang. What a beautiful scene that is. White legs, delicate collarbones, and delicate bodies are looming in the steam of the hot spring. Such a big hot spring, but there are only so many private baths. What a joke, I have been looking forward to it for a whole day. Could it be that Brother Sun Yan is regretting that there is no private bath today? Xu Yuyang's inquiring voice slowly floated. Yes, no. Sun Yan quickly denied. Boss Xu, am I the kind of person who wants to take a private bath with Jeannie Yang? They are our partners. Really? Xu Yuyang stretched out his voice, full of doubt. Yes, Sun Yan said righteously. Xu Yuyang sighed in his heart, thinking that Sun Yan was a fellow traveler, and Sun Yan was so serious for a long time. That's all I can do. I wanted to share my thoughts with each other. Now he could only frown, pick up the drink and take a sip, and follow Sun Yan's words, you're right. The most important thing for a pilot is to have good character. The girls are indeed good-looking. When they are in human form, they are no different from human women except that they can't have babies. But we can't harm them just because they are innocent and cute. They are our partners. Wouldn't those who harm their partners feel guilty? Sun Yan nodded in agreement. But he was wailing in his heart. So this is Boss Shu. He is so ideologically conscious. Compared with the upright Boss Shu, he is like a cockroach living in a crack with dirty thoughts. Sun Yan lowered his head and began to repent. Shu Yuyong looked at the night sky above his head, his old face flushed, and a wretched smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I don't know what he was thinking. And the other side of the two walls was a completely different scene. Xingqian, Lu Guang and Ling Feng were lying on a huge little yellow duck together, with 3 pairs of little feet flapping in the water, pushing the little yellow duck to swim in the hot spring. Lu Guang, your feet are much better. Ling Feng noticed that Lu Guang's legs could move freely. Yes, Lu Guang squinted and smiled gently. Thanks to Xingqian and Xingqian's master, I should be able to play in the Greenfield Advanced competition in a week. Hee. In fact, the master and I didn't do anything. It was Lu Guang who worked hard. Xingqian was wearing a durian skin and smiling silly. I don't know what the master and them are doing. Lu Guang glanced at the opposite wall, frowned slightly, and said in confusion, in the past, when we came to take a hot spring bath, the master would have private baths, only me and him. Xingqian and Ling Feng blushed immediately after hearing this. So exciting, wouldn't that mean I've seen everything? Ling Feng covered her pretty face with both hands, in disbelief. Xingqian also buried her head, looking at Lu Guang with wet eyes, not knowing what she was thinking. I was originally the master's mecha girl, and he didn't give up on me when I was at my lowest point, so I don't think it's a big deal. Lu Guang said frankly. Besides, the master didn't do anything to me, he just gave me a massage. Massage? Xingqian and Ling Feng looked at each other. Yes. Lu Guang sat on the little yellow duck, raised her slender white long legs, pinched the soft and elastic flesh on her thighs, and said with a smile, the master massaged my legs and said it can promote blood circulation and remove blood stasis, so I can stand up again soon. Then, does that really work? Xingqian was full of curiosity. It seems to be useless, but he is very happy. Every time it's like a shot of chicken blood. Ling Feng's face was already red to her ears. She wanted to remind Lu Guang that Shu Yuyong was greedy for her body. But suddenly I felt that it was meaningless to say these things. Even if Shu Yuyong really wanted something, Lu Guang would definitely agree. I also want the master to give me a massage. Xingqian muttered, holding her cheek. Then just tell him directly. Lu Guang touched Xingqian's head and said with a smile. You said your legs were sore and tired. You are the first pilot girl. Mr. Sun Yan will definitely agree. But what if he refuses? Then you just act like a spoiled child and pester him. Woo, Xingqian pouted in distress. Would a pilot girl who pestered the master and acted like a spoiled child be too willful? After 2 hours of hot spring, it was almost 12 o'clock when they came out. Xingqian, Ling Feng and Lu Guang were refreshed. Only Sun Yan and Shu Yuyong had bitter faces and forced smiles, but they had to pretend to be serious people to each other. Today's team building is over. We will continue training tomorrow for the Greenfield Advanced competition. Oh, fighting. After paying the bill, everyone was about to leave when a man and a woman walked in from outside the store. It looked like a driver and his pilot girl. Originally, the two sides had no intersection, but when they passed by Sun Yan and Xingqian, the two stopped. Hey, Sun Yan, is that you? In the confused eyes of Sun Yan and Xingqian, the young man walked over while comparing his phone. He extended a friendly hand and said expressionlessly, Hello, Sun Yan, my name is Li Yaochen, and this is my pilot girl, Shifeng. The pilot girl named Shifeng also extended her hand to Xingqian expressionlessly. Xingqian shook hands with Shifeng, who was a little shorter than her, with a confused look on her face. Sun Yan didn't know who the other person was, but he still shook hands politely and asked confusedly, Hello, what can I do for you? He thought the other person just wanted to come over to get to know him. After all, the name of the King of Nox is quite famous. As a result, the other party's next sentence directly made him unable to do it. My boss asked me to target you. I just happened to meet you, so I came to remind you. Chapter 71. The old man was so angry that he was beaten. Sun Yan knew every word Li Yaochen said. But when they were put together, it became a little difficult to understand. My boss asked me to target you. Li Yaochen repeated it and said patiently, in order to target you, Shifeng and I have made a very detailed plan. Do you want to listen? Sun Yan nodded blankly. It's like this. Since Shifeng and I have already participated in the Greenfield Advanced Race, we can't participate this time, so we can only attack you and Xingqian in the Silverstone Advanced Race after the Greenfield Advanced Race. Li Yaochen gestured and even took out his mobile phone to show the track map of the Silverstone Advanced Race to Sun Yan and Xingqian. Here are the difficult corners of the Silverstone track. Shifeng and I are going to squeeze you and Xingqian out of the track at these places. Of course, the premise is that we start side by side, and I will strive for this. If we don't start side by side, then Shifeng and I can only let you and Xingqian only get second and third in the Silverstone Advanced Race and the subsequent advanced races, and then attack you after entering the provincial track Panlong Mountain. Li Yaochen said seriously. Sun Yan listened very seriously, and Xingqian silently took out the durian peel, staring at him. I'm just a little curious. Sun Yan pinched his eyebrows. Since you are here to target me, why tell me this? Wouldn't it be easier to achieve your goal if you don't say anything? Because it's fair, Li Yaochen said with a straight face. Smart engineers can only participate in the tracks after the provincial level, so the tracks before the provincial level are the fairest. This fairness needs to be maintained. Besides, Shifeng and I are your and Xingqian's predecessors, so we have to save face. Sun Yan's mouth twitched. I thought, will your boss really not skin you? I'll just treat you as a challenge, and I'll accept your provocation. Sun Yan's expression became serious. Thank you for telling me this in advance, but when the real competition comes, I won't show mercy. I'll wait for you in the Silverstone Advanced Race. Li Yaochen nodded and led Shifeng to the hot spring. I could still vaguely hear the sound of their conversation. Master, I've thought about it again. But didn't we just this afternoon? Is it okay? I've thought about it. No problem. Then order a private soup. Swish, sound of pouring Luwei Dawang pills into mouth. Master, are these two mentally ill? Xingqian put her hands on her hips, her face full of anger. She almost couldn't help but put the durian shell on Li Yaochen and Shifeng's heads. What do you mean by pushing her and Sun Yan out of the track? Are they very likely to collide? I also think that they may have a little brain, Sun Yan is still a little overwhelmed now. I've seen weird people before, but it's the first time I've seen someone as weird as Li Yaochen and Shifeng. Ahem, brother Sun Yan, that Li Yaochen should not be underestimated. Xu Yuyang glanced at the two people who had disappeared in the hot spring store, and said in a low voice, this Li Yaochen is the new chief of the strongest club in Tianyuan City, RCC, Royal Crown Club, Crown Club. His machine girl attribute is very strong, and it is said that he has special skills. So fierce. Sun Yan raised his eyebrows. Yeah, think about where you offended the Crown Club. I don't even know him. Sun Yan shook his head, also confused. If you didn't tell me about this RCC club, I wouldn't know there is such a club. Xu Yuyang shook his head when he heard it, but he remembered that Sun Yan didn't know much about the racing club. I guess it's because you, the King of Nox, are too popular and you haven't joined any clubs. The Crown Club is putting pressure on you. Some clubs will deliberately send people to oppress you in order to force some drivers they like to join the club. But won't this push people away? No, it's called showing off your muscles. Xu Yuyang said with a smile. The ultimate goal of racers and mecha girls is to become stronger, to go to better tracks and improve their popularity, so of course they yearn for stronger clubs. Sometimes being bullied can make your mind clearer. Sun Yan curled his lips and thought to himself, what's the difference between this and being a masochist? Anyway, he won't have a good impression of such a club. No matter what, Xingqian and I must be prepared. Sun Yan and Xingqian beside him looked at each other, and their eyes gradually became sharper. The most important thing now is to prepare for the green field. Advanced competition. Take the first place in the green field advanced competition step by step. At that time, there will be 30 megapixels points for Xingqian to use, plus the existing 49 points in total. Use these MP points to improve Xingqian's attributes in a targeted manner. Even if Li Yaochen and Shifeng have 3 heads and 6 arms, they will not fall into a passive position. Green field advanced competition, come on. Oh, Master, the Durian King will not let you down. Time passed quickly, and a week passed in a blink of an eye. Tomorrow is the green field advanced competition. Yes, time flies so fast. Xingqian, Lu Guang and Ling Feng sat opposite each other in the courtyard, each holding a cup of herbal tea in their hands. Under the sycamore tree in the next yard, Xu Yuyang, Sun Yan and Zhang Laolai stood in front of the sand table, which showed the green field advanced track. Xu Yuyang was explaining each section of the track in detail, and Sun Yan and Zhang Laolai listened carefully and nodded from time to time. Xingchen, although you and Mr. Sun Yan have helped me a lot, I won't let you go tomorrow. Lu Guang looked at Xingchen with gratitude in his eyes. Her legs have completely healed, and Xu Yuyang can even drive her over the steel frame. Originally, she thought she would never be able to get on the track again in her life. Oh, come on. Xingchen waved his little fist with full energy. Durian King and Durian Big King are not vegetarians. If this Durian King gets first place, you will be Durian Little King in the future. Speaking of Sun Yan, Xingchen subconsciously turned his head to look at another courtyard. Sun Yan was lowering his head slightly, supporting his chin with one hand, and his face was full of thought. His cheeks seemed to be covered with a soft halo under the light. Her pretty face was slightly red, and she withdrew her gaze with a guilty conscience, only to feel her heartbeat speed up in an instant. Recently, she has been training hard, and so has her master. Now she can successfully complete a 20-kilometer night run. Zhang Laolai said that when her master can run 20 kilometers in 80 minutes, she can start adding other events. Let's work hard together. Lu Guang stretched out his hand and said with a smile, everyone should be in the top 10. I will also try my best to catch up with Xingchen and Lu Guang. Ling Feng plucked up the courage and high-fived Xingchen and Lu Guang. She is much more confident than before. You know, her acceleration attribute is much worse than Lu Guang and Xingchen. The green field advanced race is a track with many straight lines. If it were in the past, she would definitely not dare to speak. At the same time, SSC Club. Master, take a break. It's late. There's a race tomorrow. Hurricane came to Wang Yiming with a cup of coffee. Her master had been watching the video for a whole day. It's because there's a competition tomorrow that we need to cram at the last minute. Wang Yiming repeatedly adjusted the screen and switched it to 0.25 times the speed. The screen was showing Sun Yan and Xingchen turning a corner. We have almost mastered Sun Yan's mysterious cornering technique. The only thing to pay attention to is the choice of cornering point. He said solemnly, biting his finger, this thing can only be accumulated through training and experience. I really don't know what's wrong with that kid's brain. Has he been racing since he was in his mother's womb? Master, there are not so many bends in the Greenfield Advanced Race. So I am wary of the Silverstone Advanced Race later. Alas, Hurricane sighed helplessly, raised his hand to help Wang Yiming rub his temples, and said with a smile, Master is really thoughtful. That's right, someone as talented and hardworking as me, God will definitely favor me. Wang Yiming took a sip of coffee, full of confidence. Look, you are the gift given to me by God. As long as you are here, tomorrow's Greenfield Advanced Racer will be captured. Hurricane smiled faintly, hiding his merits and fame. The Greenfield Advanced Race is simply a track tailored for her. This track has very few bends, all ramps and straight lines. The ramp requires a flying jump, which tests the stability after landing, and the straight line tests the acceleration, and acceleration and stability happen to be her strengths. This time, she will compete in the Greenfield Advanced competition, and other girls can only run with her. VVC Club. Jin Zhengtai looked at Yunbao's smooth, white, flawless pink back and swallowed his saliva. He took a deep breath and installed the module that Li Yang gave him and Yunbao on Yunbao. In the end, he still couldn't help but touch Yunbao's slender waist. Yunye, it's a pity if you don't get a cupping jar on your back. Yunbao blushed and put on the racing suit, turned his head and glared at Jin Zhengtai, and said angrily, then master, it's a pity if you don't get castrated. Jin Zhengtai embarrassedly hooked his waist and quickly held the bedside. Sit down. The atmosphere of embarrassment and charm brewed in the room. It was quiet, with only the temperature rising gradually. Hey, master. Ah, my waist is nice to touch. Ah, it's nice to touch. Jin Zhengtai sniffed, his face flushed. If you can make it to the top 3 in this Greenfield Advanced competition. Yunbao paused, his voice almost squeezed out from his teeth, getting smaller and smaller. If you can make it to the top 3, I will let you touch it as you like, touch it. What? Jin Jungtai's eyes widened, he stood up and approached Yunbao. Are you telling the truth? Yeah, Yunbao nodded with his pretty face flushed. Then, Jin Jungtai rubbed his hands with a lewd look on his face. Then can I touch here? Where? Yunbao followed Jin Jungtai's gaze and fell on his chest. Quote. Go to hell. Boom. A shoulder throw, the ground shook. Jin Jungtai was directly embedded in the ground in the shape of a Thai character. The reward is gone. Yunbao stepped on Jin Jungtai's head and crushed it left and right, grinning. If you don't get into the top 3, you can just wait for me to castrate you with a pair of scissors. The crowd was excited. Dear audience, this is the Greenfield Advanced Competition. This advanced competition will be explained by me, your favorite sister Tai Mei. The Greenfield Advanced Competition starting point was bustling with people. A huge airship with a screen was flying around the entrance of the track. The big screen on the airship showed the passionate face of the host Tai Mei, and she was actually on a helicopter, holding a camera, filming the situation on the track at any time. This year's Greenfield Advanced Tournament is a gathering of heroes. The camera screen jumped to Xu Yuyang and Lu Guang, who were warming up. Our old players, Firefox Club owner Xu Yuyang and his robot girl Lu Guang. Half a year ago, Xu Yuyang and Lu Guang were injured in the Greenfield Advanced Tournament. Now they are back on the battlefield of the Greenfield Advanced Tournament. So, whether they can overcome the past or be better, let's wait and see. Lu Guang noticed the camera shooting, smiled gently at the camera, and hugged Xu Yuyang's arm. The screen jumped to Sun Yan and Xingqian, and Tai Meiji's voice became more exaggerated. The most popular player at present, Magician King of Nox Sun Yan and his robot girl Xingqian, what kind of visual feast will they bring us today? Xingqian held up a durian and stuck out his tongue at the camera with a smile. Sun Yan expressionlessly pointed the badge of the module store to the camera for a close-up, as well as the portrait of the daughter of the sponsor. As a racing driver, he did a flawless job. The audience cheered like thunder, and many fans even held banners of the magician. The hot scene was comparable to the star chasing in the previous life. Zhang Jinbao, who had failed 5 times in the 5 advanced competitions, made a brand new appearance with his new starting girl Ling Feng. Zhang Laolai made preparations for the start with a serious face. Ling Feng had already unfolded the car body. They were not lucky and drew the 7th starting position. Among the 76 contestants, this starting position was almost the same as the Pathfinder car. In the stands, Zidian squeezed to a front position with flexible movement. Her eyes were fixed on Sun Yan and Xingqian. At this moment, Xingqian was feeding Sun Yan a durian with a flattering face, but Sun Yan was disgusted and moved around. Zidian curled her lips and muttered to herself, "Be so good to that man, be careful that he will abandon you one day, and you will have no place to cry when you cry." Humph. Having said that, she still took out the melon seeds, fruits and drinks prepared in advance and placed them in front of her. After that, Sister Taimei introduced several contestants from big clubs, such as Wang Yiming Hurricane from SSC, Jin Jungtai Clouded Leopard from VVC, and Layan Dawn from TSD The Sound of Dawn. When the atmosphere reached its peak, the Greenfield Advanced Competition officially began. The provincial advanced track is really full of hidden talents. Sun Yan looked at the attributes of several mecha girls at a glance. Each of them was very good, definitely not much worse than Xingqian. And these drivers were far less immature than those drivers in the Nox Rally. According to Xu Yuyang, many drivers have participated in the Greenfield Advanced race for the first time. As long as they are not in the top 10, they will not pass the provincial advanced qualification of the Greenfield Advanced race. They can only win at least 3 top 10s from the remaining 4 advanced races to qualify for the provincial track Panlong Mountain. But for many mecha girls, the Greenfield Advanced race is the least difficult because it has very few bends. "Hello, my name is Lai Yan." The driver who started the car next to Sun Yan came over. She was a beautiful woman with long flaxen hair. She was very tall, about 1.75 meters tall. Her driver was a royal sister with long fiery red hair. She wore a tight black racing suit, which outlined her beautiful figure, but her expression was rather cold. Especially when Sun Yan and Lai Yan held hands, there was a hint of disgust in her eyes. "Hello." Sun Yan nodded politely. Everyone came to participate in the competition. They were competitors. There was no need to be full of resentment. He always treated others the way others treated him. Respect is mutual. Mr. Magician, you are my idol. Lai Yan took out a racing suit, pointed to the chest, and said with a smile, can you sign it for me? Sign up. This was the first time that Sun Yan encountered such a situation. He didn't find the marker in his pocket. He turned around and wanted to ask Xingqian if he had brought it. However, he saw Xingqian put his hands together in front of his chest, with a super large durian on his palm, looking very bitter and resentful. Sun Yan, is he preparing to launch a spiral ball? That, Xingqian, HMPH, no. Xingqian put away the durian and hid the marker behind him. He broke it with 2 fingers, tilted his pretty face to one side and puffed his cheeks. I forgot to bring a marker, a small fish item. Sun Yan glanced at the remains of the marker at Xingqian's feet, scratched his head and said to Lian, sorry, I didn't bring the marker. It's okay, it's okay. Lian pretended not to see the broken marker and smiled and said, in fact, you can sign after the game. Also, your robot girl is really cute, unlike the one in my family, who has a sulky face all day long. Quote, hey, master, what are you talking about? Who has a stinky face? The voice of Don came with gritted teeth. Lai Yan covered his mouth and smiled apologetically, bowed deeply to Sun Yan, and when he stood up, his expression had become extremely serious, and his edge was exposed. Mr. Magician, although you are my idol, the stadium is like a battlefield and the two of us just start side by side. When I compete later, I will go all out and will not give you face. That's right. Sun Yan nodded solemnly. He and Lai Yan started at number 35 and number 36 respectively, side by side. As time went by, it was almost their turn. Both of them returned to their respective mecha girls, and the mecha girls entered the deployment mode. Sun Yan sat in the driver's seat of Xingqian, looked up and saw Xingqian's stinky face turned over, and couldn't help laughing. What's wrong, Xingqian, why are you weird today? Quote, Master, isn't that pilot very pretty, big, and feminine? Do you like her and want to have a baby with her? Then you throw your own mecha girl aside, and she ends up lonely and depressed, crying silently in the furnace alone. Finally, she despairingly extracts the intelligent core and says goodbye to this world without durian. Quote, Xingqian spoke a long paragraph in one breath, tears already rolling in his eyes. Ah, no, I just signed my name out of courtesy. Really, do you really not want to have a baby? Really not, I swear. Sun Yan pointed 4 fingers to the sky. Xingqian stared at Sun Yan for a long time with her pink cheeks puffed up, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Hee, let's just believe what Masita said. By the way, Xingqian, we really have to go all out today. Sun Yan patted Xingqian's elastic butt and sat up straight. That Dawn is very strong. Quote, he recalled the attributes of Dawn, and now his scalp was tingling. Drift, 75 points. Acceleration, 88 points. Cornering, 72 points. Charge, 69 points. Stability, 81 points. Anti-collision, 55 points. Endurance, 81 points. Apart from Lian's skills, the attributes of Dawn can completely threaten the current Xingqian. After the module was installed, Xingqian's acceleration was no longer as good as Dawn, but Sun Yan couldn't remove the module. There were fewer corners in the Greenfield Advanced Race, but it didn't mean there were none, nor did it mean it was not difficult. For example, the cliffs and hairpins that followed the river at the finish line. If the module was removed, he and Xingqian would probably be shoulder to shoulder with the sun. Master, I won't lose to that woman and that woman's mecha girl. Quote, Xingqian's babyish voice came from the front. She turned her head and looked at Sun Yan, with a blazing fire in her eyes that Sun Yan couldn't understand. Never. Quote, the competition was very intense, but the competition was very intense. Please prepare for the start, players number 35 and 36. The radio prompt sounded. Lai Yan carefully checked the helmet and seat belt again. After confirming that there was no problem, he tightened the joystick of Dawn and took a deep breath. Dawn, we are under a lot of pressure in this competition. I didn't expect to be tied with the magician. Starting on par with the strong means that there may be a collision on the track. The feeling of this threat around will make people unconsciously nervous. Tisk, why are you on guard against that stinky man? I can kill him in seconds. Dawn tilted her head slightly with disdain on her face. Master, there is no need to learn the skills of that man. You can easily defeat 99.9% of the players by relying on me. Don, I know you are very powerful. Leon held his forehead and laughed dumbly, saying helplessly, but in the future, as we participate in higher and higher level competitions, we will also encounter stronger and stronger opponents. Those mecha girls have skills like you, and those pilots may even be intelligent mechanical engineers, so at any time, it is necessary to learn from others' strengths to arm yourself. I know, you are so long-winded. Dawn's eyes wandered and pouted. She just couldn't stand her favorite master shaking hands with a man and saying stupid things like idols. Her master only needs one idol, that is her, the top mecha girl Dawn. No matter what, I will defeat that man and his mecha girl. Master, just come to worship me. Dawn thought secretly in his heart, and as the countdown began, his body gradually lowered and entered the starting posture. Countdown 10 seconds. Boom. Leon stepped on the brakes and the accelerator to the bottom. The engine emitted waves of exciting sound at a very high speed. Sun Yan, who was driving Xingqian next to him, raised his eyebrows in surprise. Are you planning to use the catapult start? Wow, you learn it pretty fast. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, but there was nothing to be afraid of. As long as his technology appears in this world, it will soon be analyzed by other racers and girls and form their own technology. Just like before the mobile phone was produced, people would never think that there would be such a thing, but with its appearance, it has been updated to a smartphone in less than 10 years. It is difficult to break the ice, but as long as the leader appears, it is only a matter of time before the glacier melts. Master, they stole our technology. Xingqian's indignant voice came from the front, and her pouting mouth could hang a soy sauce bottle. Let them learn, that's better, otherwise it always feels like racing with a group of primitive people. Even though Sun Yan said so, Xingqian was still very unhappy. What he said was the master's idol was just a trick to lower the master's vigilance. She, the Durian King, had seen it clearly. Even if the master was confused, she would never take it lightly. As Sun Yan stepped on the accelerator to the bottom, Xingqian also made a sound wave like a beast's roar, and the car body vibrated slightly. But she felt that the momentum was not enough, so she rolled down the window and said to the Don next to her. Awoo, ah. Sun Yan, Don and Leon. Does durian really nourish the brain? Sun Yan had a little doubt at this time. As the starting gun sounded, the two mecha girls jumped out at the same time, as fast as lightning. The host, Tai Meiji, immediately turned the camera to Xingqian and Po Xiao. Dear audience, our most popular contestant, Sun Yan Xingqian, and TSD Club's new dark horse, Leon Po Xiao, have already started. From what we have seen just now, they both use the starting ejection technology invented by magician Sun Yan. The audience cheered loudly, and the first straight track of the Greenfield Advanced Race was going to pass through the entire stands. Sun Yan felt that the roar of the audience was almost suppressing the sound waves of the two mechas. Xingqian and Po Xiao are both mechas with strong performance advantages in a straight line. The Greenfield Advanced Track is 377 kilometers long. In the 1-hour race, the two mechas may show us a wonderful fight. But now, Po Xiao seems to have more advantages in straight-line acceleration. Xingqian gritted her teeth, and the host was right. Po Xiao was indeed slowly and firmly pulling away from her. Don't panic. Sun Yan held the joystick with one hand and pressed the other hand on Xingqian's buttocks skillfully. Her straight-line acceleration is indeed better than yours now. But the Greenfield Advanced Race is not just a straight line. Follow her closely and absorb the tail flow. Quote. Only Sun Yan's words can calm Xingqian's anxious heart. She pursed her lips, followed closely behind Po Xiao, and lay dormant. Lai Yan glanced at the rearview mirror and narrowed his eyes. Po Xiao, prepare to move in a serpentine manner and shake Xingqian off. The track of the Greenfield Advanced Race is very wide, and you can run at will. Compared with the time wasted in moving, Lai Yan believes that completely shaking off Sun Yan is the key to winning the first place. She is not afraid that Xingqian will deliberately hit Po Xiao. The Greenfield Advanced Race is a competition that purely tests the ability of flying, jumping and straight-line acceleration. Deliberate collisions are prohibited, otherwise there will be a penalty. In order to shake off Xingqian, Po Xiao immediately changed lanes left and right. For a moment, Xingqian didn't absorb the tail flow and almost drew out the negative pressure zone behind Po Xiao's car. But don't forget that there is still the monster Sun Yan. Don't let me suck the tail flow. I will suck it, I will suck it. Quote. Sun Yan grinned, controlling Xingqian to change lanes with Po Xiao. He seemed to have predicted Po Xiao's movement in advance, clinging to Po Xiao tightly, making Po Xiao so angry that he gritted his teeth and wanted to unwind and turn around to rush into the Xingqian cockpit to bite the hateful man. Master, I can't get rid of them. They are like dog skin plasters, so annoying. Facing the furious Po Xiao, Lian could only look at the rearview mirror in admiration. She could only see the man's upper body and the steady hands holding the joystick. If it were another player, he would have been thrown away behind Po Xiao. Only this magician could rely on the negative pressure zone to entangle Po Xiao tightly when there was a difference in the acceleration attributes of the mecha girls. Forget it if you can't get rid of them, we'll be at the ramp area soon, so stay focused. Quote. Lian hurried to calm Po Xiao's emotions. Po Xiao's skill can be used without her, but she really doesn't want to use it. She also plans to keep this skill for the Panlongshan track. Moreover, Po Xiao's ability to gather energy is average. For a track like the Greenfield Advanced Race, she can only use the skill once at most. If she wants to use it again, she has to drink sodium fiber beta type nutrient solution. Obviously, this nutrient solution is prohibited in the Greenfield Advanced Race. Turning a gentle bend, a large number of takeoff boards for flying and jumping appeared in the field of vision. Lian concentrated and calmed down, and the ramp area finally came. Before the Greenfield Advanced Race, she and Po Xiao had done a lot of training, and now she has a good understanding of flying and jumping. With Po Xiao's excellent straight-line acceleration and stability, then, defeat the magician completely here, she murmured to herself, with fighting spirit boiling in her eyes. The slope area of the Greenfield Advanced Race is still very wide, giving drivers and pilots enough operating space, but the angles of the springboards are different. The entire track is divided into 3 parts by the retaining wall. The leftmost springboard has the largest inclination angle and a higher flying height. After landing and entering the ejection area, the pilot will get a braking acceleration. The middle inclination angle is moderate, and the right inclination angle is the smallest. In theory, choosing the springboard with the smallest inclination angle will minimize the speed loss of the pilot. But the Greenfield Advanced Race organizers will definitely not let low-risk, high-return things happen. So they set up an electromagnetic braking area after each springboard. The left track has the longest braking zone, which brings the greatest electromagnetic thrust, and the middle is moderate. There is no electromagnetic braking zone on the right. Choosing the springboard track on the left means danger and loss of control, so most racers will choose the middle and right, and play it safe. After all, the most difficult part of the entire Greenfield Advanced Race is at the end, so there is no need to make yourself and the machine girl uncomfortable at the beginning. The training of Lian and Po Xiao has always been based on the inclination of the springboard on the middle track. In fact, there are very few players who choose to jump on the middle track. 90% of the players will choose the right side, and would rather give up the electromagnetic braking zone and reduce the risk of the machine girl losing control and wear. The main test here is the stability of the machine girl. In this competition, Lian also drove Po Xiao very confidently to the middle springboard track. Just when she thought Sun Yan and Xingqian would continue to catch up, she found that the silver phantom that was stuck behind like a ghost in the rearview mirror had disappeared. Master, they went to the left. Po Xiao's incredible voice sounded in front. Since the start of the Greenfield Advanced Race, there have been only a handful of players who have chosen the left springboard track and completed the race. This Greenfield Advanced Race is the last one of the year. But so far, no player has chosen the left springboard track and completed the race. So when Sun Yan and Xingqian made this choice, Po Xiao's first thought was that Sun Yan and Xingqian were crazy about winning the race. Lian pursed her lips. Although Sun Yan and Xingqian's choice was crazy, it also gave her an ominous premonition. For ordinary drivers and girls to make such a choice is equivalent to fooling around, but that is the magician, the man who leads the world's driving technology forward. Will he be arrogant and make a wrong choice? It can only be absolute self-confidence. But self-confidence sometimes does not mean that there will be no accidents. It is still too dangerous to choose the left track. Sister Tai Mei was already yelling in the helicopter, "Oh my God, what did I see? Our King of Knocks actually chose the most difficult track on the left. Was it a fight for face or was he confident? If Sun Yan and Xingqian can pass the test of the left track and finish the race, they will become the only pair of winners of the Greenfield Advanced Race Hell Difficulty Challenge this year. There is no room for regret if you choose the left track. This track will lead all the way to the river at the end. At this moment, Sun Yan and Xingqian have roared and rushed to the first springboard. Once the bow is shot, there is no turning back. Xingqian, get ready to take off. Awoo, got it. Durian charge. Bang, Xingqian's tires hit the springboard. With a loud click, the entire car body soared into the air at high speed. The photographer tracked Xingqian's car body. Everyone's eyes were focused on the big screen. Due to the large inclination of the springboard on the left track, Xingqian jumped higher than Po Xiao on the middle track next to him, more than 1 meter higher. During the jump, Sun Yan even had time to stick his head out of the car window and whistle at Lian and Po Xiao. But he immediately retracted his head. Adjusting the landing angle, stepping on the accelerator, the car body tilted slightly. Po Xiao next door landed first, and under the braking of the electromagnetic catapult, it instantly pulled away from Xingqian. Sun Yan and Xingqian landed later. At the moment of landing, Sun Yan immediately released the brakes for the first time, and pressed the accelerator again to gradually restore the grip. At the same time, he controlled the steering wheel to control the balance. Xingqian swayed slightly in a Z shape on the track. The impact and inertia caused by landing were mostly offset in this simple rhythm. Then Xingqian obtained a 50-meter-long electromagnetic acceleration zone. The moment he left the acceleration zone, the accumulated potential energy was suddenly released. Boom! The speed of the star was pushed to 600, like a cannon firing. In the blink of an eye, he surpassed the dawn in front. Dear audience, Sun Yan and Xingqian landed successfully. I would like to call it the most beautiful flying jump. Cameraman, please cut the footage just now. I want to use it as a promotional collection for the Greenfield Advanced Competition. The audience cheered loudly. Zidian stared blankly at Xingqian's figure riding away from the dust, and the dried durian in his hand accidentally stuck into his nostrils. After the first springboard, it was a straight line and a gentle curve until the next springboard. Through the tempered glass wall next to them, Don and Lai Yan could see Sun Yan and Xingqian running at lightning speed in front. Although on the long straight line, Don was still closing the distance with Xingqian with the advantage of acceleration. But Don and Lai Yan were not feeling well. Master, they succeeded in their jump, and their landing posture was perfect. They didn't lose control, didn't hit the glass wall, and didn't fall apart. Ah, I know, Lian said palely. He is indeed a magician. We still underestimated his ability. He and Xingqian have a tacit understanding. Maybe they have practiced this kind of inclined springboard countless times. There was silence in the cockpit for a while. Po Xiao looked at the approaching springboard and said unwillingly, "Use your skills, master." "Use it now." Master, you understand, right?" Po Xiao said in a low voice. "The distance between each springboard is fixed. We can only catch up with Xingqian when we reach the second springboard. In other words, as more and more springboards are rushed, the gap between us and them will become larger and larger until it cannot be made up. Po Xiao, it doesn't matter whether we win or lose in the Greenfield Advanced Tournament. We just need to get into the top 10. Lai Yan quickly comforted. Your skills will be used in Panlong Mountain and will become our trump card. But, master, I have never lost in a straight line. Po Xiao tilted his head slightly, and the red hair on his forehead covered his eyes with a layer of haze. Lai Yan saw a deep obsession in Po Xiao's eyes. She suddenly realized that for Po Xiao, the Greenfield Advanced Tournament might not be as simple as an advanced tournament. She is a top-level mecha girl born with special skills, and has the opportunity to become a world-class mecha girl. But now she is going to lose to an ordinary mecha girl. How can she be willing? That may become her nightmare for the rest of her life. Okay, we won't hide our cards. Lian nodded heavily. Since Dawn wants to win, let Dawn win. It doesn't matter what strategy or trick, at most she will reach the top with absolute strength. Rushing onto the springboard, leaping, landing, the silver phantom beside her once again caught up with them at a terrifying speed and easily surpassed them. As Dawn expected, the distance this time was even greater, but there was no fear in their eyes, only the momentum of galloping. Now, Leonya roared. Don raised his head. There was a flash of red light in his eyes. The engine made a sharp sound like the chirping of countless birds, and a faint red halo enveloped the car body, dragging a stream of light phantom behind her. Extreme stance. Activate. Let me show you my complete state. The sound of the bird was heard, but the sound was still moving. Where is the bird chirping from? Sun Yan was confused. It stands to reason that he was in the cockpit of Xingqian, and it was in a high-speed driving state, so it was impossible to hear the bird chirping. But the bird chirping was clearly audible, and it was getting closer and closer. Maybe it's a bird flying from somewhere. Xingqian was concentrating on the track and didn't care. Sun Yan felt something was wrong, so he looked in the direction of the bird chirping. I saw that Dawn, who was originally left behind by him and Xingqian, was approaching at a ghostly speed. It seemed that her entire body was covered with blazing flames, sparks and lightning all the way. With a whoosh, she completed the overtaking and ran in front of Sun Yan and Xingqian, leaving only charred traces on the track. The air was filled with the irritable breath of sparks. I'm a coward. Sun Yan was stunned by the flaming Dawn in front of him, and subconsciously slapped Xingqian lightly on the butt. Xingqian, you see, the girl in front is on fire. Still running even when on fire. What kind of competitive spirit is this? Even he was impressed by this spirit of never giving up, but it was a bit life-threatening. However, no, master, that mecha girl is not on fire. Xingqian was no less shocked than Sun Yan. His big blue eyes were wide open, and his mouth moved as he said, Dawn, she got angry, she just used her skills. Having special skills is a prerequisite for becoming a world-class mecha girl. Top mecha girls have special skills. The specific effects of such skills are almost kept secret before they are used. When the mecha girls are auctioned, they will only show a little to prove that they have special skills, so as to increase their auction prices. Xingqian actually showed it at the beginning, but in the eyes of those clubs, Xingqian just showed a burst of cylinder, and naturally became a laughingstock in the end. Only Sun Yan had a golden finger to see the special skills that Xingqian had. But he couldn't see that Dawn had special skills. Now that I think about it, maybe the golden finger can only see whether there are special skills on the uncontracted mecha girls. Does this Dawn actually have special skills? It's really rare. Sun Yan looked at Dawn, who was almost out of sight, and sighed again in his heart that the track after Nox was really full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. But aren't Lian and Po Xiao too competitive? If it were him and Xingqian, he would rather hide his skills and use them later in the provincial track. Master, what should we do? They are so fast, we can't catch up. Xingqian turned her head, puffed her cheeks and pouted, her face full of complaints. Her competitive spirit is actually average, especially the advanced competition is not a big competition, and she doesn't have to win first place. The main thing is that she just doesn't want to see her rival surpass her. Sun Yan originally wanted to perfunctorily, but when he saw Xingqian crying, he couldn't perfunctorily anymore. It's just a special skill. Can she cover it until the end of the game? Sun Yan stretched out his hand and pressed it on Xingqian's slender and soft waist. Xingqian, who had no reaction when her butt was slapped, hummed softly with a red face when her waist was touched. However, Sun Yan's mind was full of fancy operations and he didn't pay attention to it at all. I didn't plan to use this trick at first, because I think this is an advanced game, there is no need to fight so hard, but since the opponent has used skills. Quote. He grinned and directly pulled out Xingqian's waterfall module. Once again, I sighed at the magic of the robot girl. If it were an ordinary racing car, it would be impossible to complete this operation. How could the driver modify it while driving? But with the robot girl, all this became possible, although this practice was indeed a bit vulgar. As soon as the module was pulled out, Xingqian's attributes changed instantly. Drift, 50 points. Acceleration, 90 points. Cornering, 50 points. Charge, 90 points. Stability, 75 points. Anti-collision, 80 points. Endurance, 85 points. Cornering dropped 15 points, and acceleration increased from 86 to 90 points, 2 points higher than Dawn. Don't underestimate the difference in acceleration, but the actual speed is a complete crushing. The attribute scoring of the machine girl is extremely strict, and even a difference of only 1 point can clearly show the difference. This is why Dawn's acceleration, which was only 2 points higher than Xingqian before, still made Xingqian exhausted and couldn't catch up. Master, why did you pull out Waterfall? Xingqian turned his head and looked at. Sun Yan's eyes were full of panic. She had always thought that the Waterfall module played an important role in her victory over U-786. Now this module has become her treasure. However, the treasure was suddenly pulled out by Sun Yan. Although the car body has obviously become lighter and more energetic, it also made her feel empty and insecure at the moment. Aren't you going to beat Dawn? How can you not pull out that Waterfall? Sun Yan held the joystick with one hand and tossed that Waterfall module up and down with the other hand, saying innocently, or I will put it back for you. Sun Yan put the Waterfall module close to Xingqian's waist, but found that it could not be put in. He suddenly remembered that Boss Shu seemed to have said last night that the plugging and unplugging of the Machine Girl's module had a CD. Oh no, he originally planned to plug Xingqian back when he was close to the finish line to deal with the bend after the river jump. Stupid Masada, Xingqian pouted angrily, but his eyes were a little doting. The module cannot be installed repeatedly within an hour. Ah, this. Sun Yan touched his nose awkwardly. Muggle. What should I do now, Masada? I am not sure about the hairpin bend after the river jump at the end. Xingqian said with self-blame. If my cornering ability is better, Masada won't have to give me this kind of module with more cornering attributes, directly increase the acceleration, and we don't have to worry about not catching up with Dawn. Woo. Seeing Xingqian's self-blame, Sun Yan's face gradually became serious. When did he start to care whether Xingqian's attributes could meet the standards? When Xingqian was contracted, Xingqian's cornering attribute was less than 10. At that time, he was ambitious and had never been afraid. Now that the hard days are over, Xingqian can even turn the corners skillfully. Instead, he starts to look ahead and behind. The first thing before the race is to study Xingqian's properties to see if he can pass the track safely. How can he be a track emperor? Racing itself is an extreme sport with swords dancing. No adventure, no racing. It's better to go home and farm than to pursue 100% safety. Xingqian's shortcomings should be made up by him as a driver. Isn't this the real meaning of a driver's existence? Masita, hello, Durian King. In Xingqian's confused shout, Sun Yan finally came back to his senses. The concerns in his eyes faded, leaving only the flame of confidence and determination. What are you afraid of? He put his hand on Xingqian's butt to convey his faith, raised the corners of his mouth, and smiled. The last hairpin bend. Let me take you there. The scene of Po Xiao using the robot girl skills undoubtedly set off the entire green field advanced competition. Whether it was the audience in the stands or the players who were preparing to start or already on the track, they were all amazed. Dear audience, did you see the Red Phantom? This peak moment belongs to our number 36 player, Lai Yan and her robot girl, Po Xiao. Before the start of this game, none of us would have thought that Po Xiao was a robot girl with special skills. There are too few such robot girls. If nothing unexpected happens, the champion of this Greenfield Advanced competition has been basically determined. The voice of the host Tai Meiji echoed at the starting point of the Greenfield Advanced competition. The audience was full of voices. The audience was stunned but did not question Tai Mei's judgment. The difference between a skilled mecha girl and a non-skilled mecha girl is not only in price, but also in dominance on the track, which is equivalent to the difference between an intelligent mechanic and an ordinary driver. If a top mecha girl with special skills appears in a race full of ordinary mecha girls, it is like a wolf mixed in with a husky. The other ordinary mecha girls have no chance of winning. Wang Yiming, who had not yet started the race, suddenly turned pale. He clenched his fist and punched the guardrail next to him, complaining, "What the hell, it's just an advanced race, are you kidding me? Even if it's a top mecha girl, don't you know that hidden skills are a trump card? I'm so angry, as the young master of the SSC club, I just want to get the first place once, so what? What's wrong? Master, don't worry, at most we can get a top 3 today." Hurricane pulled Wang Yiming's hand to calm him down. In fact, she was not feeling well. She thought she had defeated all the heroes today, but Sun Yan Xingqian, who took the left springboard track, appeared. It's okay, there are still masters. All the top mecha girls are here. Who can stand this? Jin Zhengtai, who had just left the starting point, broke out in a cold sweat. He poked Yunbao's butt and said flatteringly, "Well, Yunbao, why don't you change the threshold of the penalty? You heard it too. This Sun Yan Xingchen is outrageous enough, and that Po Xiao is even more outrageous. These two have taken the top 2 places. Then we will strive for the 3rd place." Yunbao turned his head and glanced at Jin Zhengtai, saying expressionlessly, "If you don't get the 3rd place but get the 4th place, then the master can choose a pair of gold scissors, the 5th to the 10th, the silver scissors and the rusty scissors after the 10th. You decide for yourself." How can this be? How can this be? Jin Zhengtai wiped the cold sweat from his forehead tremblingly. In his heart, he had already worshipped all the gods and Buddhas in the sky. Xingchen and Po Xiao in front, please drive slower. Someone is really going to die. Only the players who were at the front of the starting grid were not affected. For example, Zhang Laolai and Ling Feng. As time went by, they had reached the finish line. Zhang Laolai did not take the 250-meter jump as he wished. Instead, he took steady steps and chose to jump along the river bank to a width of 150 meters according to his usual training. In this greenfield advanced race, he only wanted to finish the race with Ling Feng, build up his and Ling Feng's confidence, and improve their tacit understanding. Of course, it would be even better if he could get a top 10. Are you ready, Ling Feng? This was Zhang Laolai's 2nd time participating in the greenfield advanced race. The last time he and Po Yu rolled over somewhere in front of him before they even got here. Looking at the rushing river in front of him, he was still a little nervous, even though he had trained on the steel frame countless times. Sweat beads oozed from his palms holding the joystick. Ling Feng could feel Zhang Laolai's emotions. Zhang Laolai was nervous, and so was she. But Ling Feng understood that if both of them were nervous, the result of the game might be very bad. She turned her head and looked at Zhang Laolai, took a deep breath, and her eyes conveyed the belief of winning and the momentum of moving forward. "Master, I am ready. We will start first and set a good example for Xingchen and Lu Guang. Just drive me forward." Ling Feng, Master, I believe in you." Zhang Laolai was stunned, and the tension and uneasiness in his heart faded away with Ling Feng's encouragement. Po Yu never said such words to him before. Whenever there was a problem on the track, Po Yu would complain first and blame him as the driver. He seemed to have never been positively criticized by Po Yu. I saw it with my own eyes. The current Ling Feng gave him something he had never had before. So, can I also be trusted and relied on? Zhang Laolai suddenly raised his head and clenched his hand holding the joystick. His trembling heart sank at this moment. "Okay, I'll take you there." As he got closer and closer to the springboard, Zhang Laolai pressed the accelerator to the full, and Ling Feng's speed became faster and faster. Hesitation, fear, cowardice, all thrown behind him. He is no longer the Zhang Laolai of the past. Now he has a partner he can trust completely. "Go, Ling Feng." Bang! The wheels hit the springboard heavily. Ling Feng took off into the air, drawing a beautiful arc between the river banks and on the rushing river water. At the same time, Xu Yuyang and Lu Guang were also approaching the river at the end. "Lu Guang, you are in great shape today." Xu Yuyang looked at the track in the distance, his heart full of emotion. "I didn't expect to be able to walk on the track with Lu Guang again so soon. This moment seemed to be in a dream." "Yes, Master, compared with the last time, I am faster and in better shape." Lu Guang's soft voice sounded in front, with a hint of happiness. "Let's challenge the 150-meter jump again. Just what I want." Lu Guang's eyes were shining. Today she will tear the nightmare of the past into pieces with her own hands. Just then, the roar of the violent engine sounded behind her. Lu Guang's face changed drastically, and Xu Yuyang quickly looked up at the rearview mirror, only to see a fiery red mecha girl that seemed to rush out of the embers rushing towards her, and not far behind her, a silver stream of light was approaching rapidly. And the violent engine roar came from these two mecha girls. "That's Xingchen." Xu Yuyang was dumbfounded, his throat dry. The next second, Po Xiao and Xingchen almost passed by Lu Guang side by side. Lu Guang, who was caught in the middle, couldn't help but exclaimed, and felt two sharp blades suddenly passing by. Are they crazy? What are they trying to do at this speed? Xu Yuyang couldn't believe it. He originally thought that he had seen Xingchen's linear acceleration ability, but now it seems that Sun Yan and Xingchen didn't run seriously when they jumped over the steel frame. Lu Guang looked at Xingqian and Po Xiao, who were running straight to the river bank, and was speechless. He was shocked beyond words. The child, who was usually careless, always talking about durian, and would blush when mentioning the master, actually had such a terrifying explosive power. Master, the skill time of extreme stance has ended. Po Xiao's hoarse voice was more or less mixed with a little unwillingness. Entering extreme stance, her steering will be locked, but she will gain explosive acceleration over time, gradually decreasing from 98% to 33%. During this period, the collision resistance will be greatly improved and the driving position will be reinforced. But after the skill ends, the car body will also enter the overload state, and all attributes will be reduced by 15% for a full minute. This is a skill that is absolutely desperate. But she didn't expect that even if she used special skills. Xingqian still followed her gradually. The overload state will end in 3 seconds, and we still have a chance to speed up. Lian gritted his teeth, and his back was full of cold sweat. Now the speed of dawn has reached 397 kilometers per hour. This speed is gradually decreasing as the skill ends. This is because the overload state causes Dawn's engine to enter a semi-dormant state, but after 3 seconds, the engine will be activated and they will have a chance to accelerate explosively. As long as they grab the springboard first, they will win. 3. At this moment, Xingqian next to them is half a car head ahead of them. Lian and Po Xiao couldn't understand what happened to Xingqian, who was slower than them. 2. Xingqian was ahead by half a car body. The river bank had already appeared in sight, and both sides were ready to fight for the springboard. 1. The roars of Lian and Po Xiao almost overlapped. The extinguished engine restarted with a thunderous roar. Boom! At this moment, the wheels of Po Xiao actually spewed out flames and black smoke. At this moment, Po Xiao's speed suddenly broke through to 420. The whole car body was pushed forward and surpassed Xingqian. Grabbed the springboard, Lian clenched his fists and controlled Po Xiao to block Xingqian's position. It was already a sure win. The width of the springboard can only allow one car to pass. Choosing a flying jump height of 250 meters, Sun Yan and Xingqian must use the same springboard with them. Just when Lian was thinking this, she heard the sound of the engine behind her suddenly faded away. Squeak! The sound of the tires scraping on the ground tore through her soul. She turned her head blankly, her eyes gradually widening. In her field of vision, Sun Yan drove the Xingqian like an arrow from a string and rushed to a cliff upstream of the river bank. The strong never complain about the environment. If there is no springboard, create one. Thanks to Boss Shu's thorough explanation of the Greenfield Advanced Race Track yesterday, including the terrain conditions on the river bank, Sun Yan remembered the cliff located upstream of the river bank. The cliff is inclined upward at an angle of about 30 degrees, and the height difference to the opposite bank is 12 meters. In an emergency, this can be used as a springboard to cross the river. However, Sun Yan wants more than just a flying jump. As he got closer to the cliff, he looked at Xingqian's speed 481, and the number was still rising slowly and steadily. This was the first time he fully released Xingqian's straight-line acceleration performance without starting the Emperor engine. He never let go of the throttle. And what was about to greet him and Xingqian was a gorgeous flight. Xingqian, are you afraid? No, tut 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 tut. If you're not afraid, you'll shiver. Mas ta, this is my unique way to warm up the car. Sun Yan laughed dumbly. His actions were indeed crazy, but he would safely send himself and Xingqian to the finish line. This is the confidence of the track emperor. Everything is calculated. Dear audience, witness the birth of the new king. Po Xiao and her partner Lian have successfully grabbed the best springboard. I can only say that they are worthy of being top-level girls. Sun Yan changed lanes too quickly. It was so fast that the host, Sister Tai Mei, was still praising Dawn, and the cameraman's camera was still locked on Dawn. Until the brake sound of drifting towards the cliff sounded. Sister Tai Mei widened her eyes, and the microphone in her hand almost slipped. The words that were still brewing in her mouth seemed to be frozen in her throat. The cameraman subconsciously followed Xingqian, but he was a little powerless, and couldn't even lock the speeding Xingqian in the center of the picture. Too fast, phantom-like speed, like a silver lightning. But there is a cliff ahead. Audience friends, Sister Tai Mei stuttered when she spoke, and suddenly woke up. It seemed that now was not the time to continue the commentary. She anxiously put down the microphone and shouted to the stunt staff next to her, "Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and notify the medical team. Sun Yan is the king of knocks, and a genius driver who has created many racing technologies. Even if he cannot become an intelligent mechanic in the future, he can gain the respect of all drivers and mecha girls by virtue of his contribution to the development of racing technology. It is no exaggeration to say that Sun Yan is gradually becoming a star in the eyes of all ordinary mecha girls and pilots below the level of intelligent mechanics. If such a star falls in the Greenfield Advanced competition, Sister Tai Mei no longer dares to think about it. She doesn't know how serious the subsequent impact will be, but for her, suspension and unemployment are considered light. The staff reacted and immediately notified the medical team. It was too late, because Sun Yan and Xingqian had already rushed over the cliff and soared into the air. The cameraman's screen was finally able to lock on Xingqian. Looking at the silver streamer flying in the air, the audience was silent. Many people subconsciously stood up and leaned forward, as if to see this scene more clearly and carefully. Zidian stared blankly at the big screen, and the dried durian in his hand slipped out of his fingers and fell to the ground. In a corner of the audience, Li Yaochen and Shifeng were also staring at the screen. Their expressionless and usually calm faces finally showed some signs of change. Li Yaochen's pupils shrank slightly, his eyes full of astonishment. Shifeng held Li Yaochen's hand tightly, her mouth slightly open. On the track, Lu Guang stared at the soaring silver phantom, his heartbeat slowed down, and he forgot to breathe. At the finish line, Zhang Laolai and Ling Feng leaned against the guardrail, looking at the stars flying off the cliff with pale faces. In prison, Uncle Liang stiffened his neck, sweating profusely, staring at the TV in front of him. The iced black tea bottle in his hand was squeezed into a ball. On the ground, the body of the remote control was broken into pieces, and next to him, several inmates were bruised and swollen, huddled in the corner and shivering. Time seemed to slow down at this moment. Everyone clearly recognized it. The young racer who was respected as a magician was dancing on the edge of death. "Master, can I do it?" "No. Before that, can you grant me a wish?" "I already said no." With 3 seconds of flying time, Xingqian's speed was 482 km per hour, and the flying distance was about 400 meters. Xingqian turned his head and looked at Sun Yan, his eyes full of tears. It was love. Sun Yan looked at the sky ahead, his mind full of shrewd calculations, and the movements of his hands were more dazzling than those of doctors on the operating table. Wind resistance would affect the posture of the stars. The state of the car body was constantly changing every millisecond when it was in the air, and he was constantly adjusting the landing posture of the stars. When the silver streamer was level with the sun, the parabola reached the top, and the stars began to fall. Sun Yan's eyes passed the hairpin bend, and his goal was the finish line. "Masita, actually I like." Xingqian closed her eyes and bit her red lips, clenched her fists, and her pretty face flushed red. At the moment when she thought she was about to fall, her courage in her heart was beyond words. At this moment, all the protective forces of the entire car body were reinforced to the cockpit. Boom! The front of the car and the ground formed an angle of about 45 degrees, which was perpendicular to the straight line leading to the finish line after the hairpin bend. Lian and Po Xiao, who had just passed the hairpin, could only watch Sun Yan and Xingqian fall in front of them. In the cockpit, Sun Yan had no expression on his face and swung the joystick. Squeak! The tires rubbed wildly on the ground, sparking sparks and black smoke. Xingqian's speed display jumped up and down like an electrocardiogram. He braked, shifted gears, and released the accelerator for a moment before pressing it again. Xingqian's body rotated 180 degrees horizontally and was flush with the track, facing the finish line. Boom! The roar of the engine ran through the entire track. When it was about to reach the finish line, he braked and Xingqian drifted steadily on the podium. Sun Yan held the car window with one hand and opened the bottle cap of mineral water with the other hand. He raised it to Po Xiao and Lian, who were late, and drank it in one gulp. Sorry, it flew a little far. As usual, he suppressed a wave of competitors. Sun Yan retracted his gaze, and then he remembered that Xingqian seemed to have said something to him the moment he landed. "Xingqian, what did you say just now?" "The sound of the suspension was too loud, I didn't hear it." Xingqian looked around blankly, How could she stop at the finish line in a flash? What happened just now? After hearing Sun Yan's words, she reacted. Her pretty face quickly turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye, and even her ears were stained with red clouds, red and purple. No, I didn't say anything. Really, if you feel uncomfortable, please tell me. Really, I didn't say anything. Okay then. Sun Yan threw the empty mineral water bottle out of the window, and it just fell into the trash can. Xingqian covered his burning face and took a deep breath. Masita, big idiot. The car was so beautiful, but it was a big mistake. Ah, why do you call him a big fool? Sun Yan was confused. Isn't his super flying jump handsome? He avoided the risk of the hairpin turn and won the first place, thanks to his precise calculation and at least 50 years of racing experience and technology that is ahead of the world. He thought Xingqian would say admiringly, Master, you are awesome. Ah, it's a big blow. The game is over, and Xingqian cancels the deployment state. His feet suddenly became weak and fell into Sun Yan's arms. Xingqian, what's wrong with you? Sun Yan's heart tightened, and he quickly hugged his own robot girl. The jump just now was handsome, the landing posture and angle were perfect, and the subsequent force unloading was also done very well, but it must be a certain burden for Xingqian. He considered Xingqian's high collision resistance and stability, which must be no problem for such a super jump. It's okay, my feet are just numb. Xingqian pouted and lay in Sun Yan's arms with a red face. In fact, the feet were only numb for a moment and then it was fine. Since those words just now could not be said, she would take every opportunity to covet the master's arms more. She also worked hard to complete the game, and this small reward was what she deserved. Maybe the tire and shock absorption were damaged. Sun Yan was still worried. Let's take it for a checkup. No, I'll just rest for a while. Xingqian certainly didn't want to go for a checkup. Wouldn't it be exposed if people said that she was fine? How can it be just a rest? I think. Idiot. Xingqian bit Sun Yan's shoulder lightly and interrupted Sun Yan's words. Lai Yan got off the Dawn and looked at Sun Yan with a complicated expression. Dawn also released the deployment mode, stumbled and held the guardrail, and stood at the finish line in a daze. She hugged her head with empty eyes and squatted down against the guardrail in pain. Lost. I actually lost. Lost to an ordinary robot girl with no skills, Lai Yan felt that Dawn's state was not right, and immediately retracted her gaze and walked to Dawn to comfort her softly. No, Dawn, you can't think like that. There is no problem with your performance, it is definitely the best. We just lost to the magician in technology, who would have thought that he would use the cliff jump. Dawn is just too competitive, and she has capital to be proud. Since Dawn came to the club and became her robot girl, she has participated in many training matches and regular matches, and even played in dangerous underground matches, but she has never lost, and these have also forged a heart that refuses to admit defeat. It can be seen what a blow it is for her to lose to Sun Yan and Xingqian this time. I'm defeated. Xingqian put her hands on her hips and smiled proudly. Suddenly, her waist was no longer sore and her legs were no longer weak. Although she didn't know how she won, and although she didn't confess successfully, she still had a chance to confess in the future. Today, she actually stepped on the hidden rival in love. Today is the great victory of the Durian King. She took out the durian shell and approached Po Xiao, intending to give Po Xiao a coronation ceremony. But she saw the haze under the shadow of Po Xiao's bangs and eyes full of tears. Xingqian paused and hid the durian shell behind her. We are all machine girls, and she can actually understand Po Xiao's feelings. The track is the honor of the machine girl. Po Xiao, who has always been a victorious general, must want to win this time, right? That special skill must have been reserved for the provincial competition, but it was forced to use it at this time. Po Xiao, she called softly. Po Xiao looked up, looking at Xingqian with tearful eyes. Why, are you here to laugh at me, the defeated general? You are really powerful. I can't beat you even with my special skills. I admit defeat this time. No, Xingqian smiled and shook his head with his hands behind his back. Actually, I also have special skills. Do you know why I was able to catch up with you later? It's because I used my skills. What? Po Xiao widened his eyes in astonishment. You also have special skills? Yes, the acceleration type, but it's more hidden and not as loud as yours. Xingqian stuck out his tongue. No wonder, no wonder you can jump off the cliff. Po Xiao lowered his head and muttered to himself, closing his eyes and breathing a sigh of relief. When he opened his eyes again, the confusion and pain in his eyes disappeared, leaving only the rekindled fighting spirit and confidence. Next time, we won't lose to you. She pouted and snorted, holding Lian's hand and leaving. Lian. Yan turned her head and blinked at Xingqian gratefully. She knew whether Xingqian used any skills or not. He just made up a reason to comfort Po Xiao. He was able to win the championship and have such a broad mind. It must be the guidance of the driver Sun Yan, right? Thinking of this, Lai Yan admired Sun Yan even more. Don't let it slip, Xingqian reminded Lai Yan silently with lip language. Lai Yan nodded, and a relaxed smile rose at the corner of her mouth. She suddenly remembered something and quickly took out the racing suit. Don't be busy, Po Xiao, I haven't asked the magician for an autograph yet. Sign a fart, let's go. Po Xiao angrily snatched the racing suit and tucked it under his armpit. He picked up Lai Yan with his backhand and left with Lai Yan, who was reluctant to leave. Xingqian secretly gave Po Xiao a thumbs up. Well done, she did not let down my well-intentioned comfort. Is it really okay for you to say that? Sun Yan approached Xingqian, looking at the backs of Lian and Po Xiao. If Po Xiao knew that you didn't use special skills in the future, he would definitely think that your kindness today was a humiliation. He shook his head in a condescending manner, spread his hands and pouted. The machine girl also needs to improve her psychological quality. She can't stand any blows. She will lose many games in the future. No, master. Xingqian hugged Sun Yan's arm, blinked her big eyes and said, next time we may have to use skills to defeat her. In my hometown, people like you will be defined as saints. Master, what is a saint? Can I feed you milk? Sun Yan. Nothing, I just praised you for being cute, kind and considerate. Hehe. Sun Yan and Xingqian successfully completed the game, and inspired by Sun Yan and Xingqian, Lu Guang and Xu Yuyang successfully jumped 150 meters across the river and shattered their nightmares with their own hands. At the same time, the audience at the starting point of the Greenfield Advanced Race was already in an uproar. The medical team was ultimately not able to be used. The excited Time AG was repeatedly replaying the scene of Sun Yan and Xingqian jumping off the cliff on the big screen. Dear audience members, we still underestimated the surprise that the magician brought us. It turns out that real racers will never be conquered by the track. They will conquer the track with the robot girl. If there is no springboard, then use the cliff and the height difference as the capital for jumping, bypass the hairpin bend, and jump nearly 400 meters to the finish line. I just want to ask, looking at the history of the Greenfield Advanced Race, who else is there? The cheers in the audience shook the ground. The fans of Sun Yan and Xingqian were like celebrating the new year, and some of them were so excited that they even passed out. The scene of Sun Yan and Xingqian jumping off the cliff will be recorded in the history of the Greenfield Advanced Race. Sister Tai Mei held the microphone and said with emotion, it represents not only a choice to win the Greenfield Advanced Race, but also represents the adventurous spirit of racers and even our human beings. There are always some beautiful things in this world that are worth our all. Even if it means being torn to pieces, it is worth it. Victory! Tai Mei clenched her fists and roared. Victory! The cheers from the audience were deafening. Xingqian's master is really amazing. Looking at the rioting audience around her, Zidian took a deep breath. Although she hated creatures like drivers, she had to admire Sun Yan. Sun Yan was called a magician. No, in the eyes of many mecha girls, he is a god. Facing gods, even if she had prejudices, she would still subconsciously raise her heart of reverence. If she could become his mecha girl. Uncontrollably, Zidian had such thoughts in her mind. But she soon shook her head sadly. Can you be happy by becoming Sun Yan's mecha girl? Not necessarily. Xingqian is so happy and lucky because she has excellent straight-line acceleration ability. Sun Yan made up for Xingqian's shortcomings in skills, so Xingqian was able to be Sun Yan's starting player. But what does she have? She doesn't have Xingqian's speed, stability and collision resistance. She has skills and she is very flexible, but unfortunately, Sun Yan doesn't need them. She hasn't even paid off the penalty for breach of contract. People like me are really suitable for one person. Zidian sighed with a wry smile. She stared at the silver streamer on the big screen that was frozen in the sun, with only deep blessings and envy in her eyes. Xingqian likes to eat durian, but unfortunately she doesn't think durian is delicious. Durian is too sweet, and the sweet taste makes it difficult for her to adapt. Zidian turned around and left with the bag of dried durian. She wanted to try durian. I just want to experience the taste of happiness. But this naive imitation will not make happiness interoperable. Just like flowers blooming in the sun, flowers in the shadow will wither no matter how beautiful they are. This Sun Yan is a bit fierce. Li Yaochen looked at the screen and came to this conclusion expressionlessly. Shifeng beside him nodded seriously. Xingqian is very powerful, we need to be vigilant. Try it out in advance. Second, the two looked at each other, and everything was unspoken. Master. Shifeng suddenly pulled Li Yaochen's sleeve and raised his little face. I thought about it. But, this is the audience seat, and this morning wasn't. There is a toilet in the back. Shifeng hugged Li Yaochen's arm and blinked. Can you? Li Yaochen immediately took out a pack of Luwei Dawang pills and poured it into his mouth. Let's go, let's go. In prison, Uncle Liang happily drank a sip of iced black tea. He picked up the broken remote control on the ground and threw it to the cellmate next to him. I'm done, you can change the channel. The cellmates looked at Uncle Liang in horror as he walked into the toilet, and they dared not move for a long time until a happy whistle came out of the toilet. Hey, King of Nox. Hey, the first place in the Greenfield Advanced Competition, this kid. What a promising guy. In the Greenfield Advanced Competition, Sun Yan and Xingqian won the first place with a score of 48 minutes and 54 seconds without any suspense. The second place was Lai Yan and Po Xiao, but Po Xiao might not want to face the humiliation, so he didn't come to the podium. The third place was Wang Yiming from the SSC Club and his new robot girl Hurricane, but this result obviously made the young master not very satisfied, and he had a gloomy face throughout the award ceremony. It is worth mentioning, Zhang Laolai and Ling Feng became the 10th goalkeepers in the Greenfield Advanced Competition. Although they were only one step away from elimination, they were fortunate to have obtained the qualification for advancement and completed a provincial advanced competition for the first time. However, for Zhang Laolai, these seemed to be nothing. His biggest gain in this competition was to gain Ling Feng's recognition, pick up his lost dignity, and complete the assessment of the Durian King and the Durian King. Jin Zhengtai and Yunbao of the VVC Club won the 8th place. When the driver of the Han country was interviewed by the media, his face was pale and trembling, as if a disaster was about to come. Yunbao, on the other hand, had a silly smile on his face. He just fiddled with the sterling silver scissors that he had prepared in his hand from time to time. At night, a grand celebration party was held in the Firefox Club. Of course, the expenses were paid by the wealthy Boss Shu, and all the drivers and girls in the entire black market could participate. When everyone was toasting and celebrating, Boss Shu and Zhang Laolai found Sun Yan with a serious face. Sun Yan, your goal is the provincial track, Panlong Mountain. Now you have completed an advanced competition. As long as you win 2 more games, you and Xingqian will be qualified for the advanced competition, but, in addition to the advanced competition, you need to meet a condition to enter the Panlong Mountain track. Sun Yan put down his wine glass and raised his eyebrows, asking in confusion, what other conditions are needed? Zhang Laolai and Xu Yuyang looked at each other, pursed their lips, and said carefully, you have to join a club, or simply set up a club of your own and participate in the competition as a club. The more you go, the more you will be in trouble. Join the club. Sun Yan felt unhappy when he mentioned the club. It was impossible for him to join the club, mainly because he was stressed by U-786. It would be okay to open a club by himself, but now the prize money from various competitions, plus the usual expenses, is only more than 3 million. This money is definitely not enough to host a club. After all, a club is not just a store plus a brand. You need a coach, a girl, and more drivers. Is it a hard condition to have a club to participate in Panlong Mountain? Well, I guess so. Xu Yuyang took over the conversation, and he had already noticed the impatience in Sun Yan's eyes, and quickly explained, Brother Sun Yan, I absolutely do not mean to ask you to join my club. I just want to tell you the rules of the Panlong Mountain track. The current Panlong Mountain track only allows clubs to participate. Why? Well, it is said that it is because the official believes that after the provincial level, racers and pilots cannot do it alone. He needs a complete team support, otherwise it will be a waste of resources. This regulation also forces talented players and pilots to choose a club early. Sun Yan curled his lips. The official reason is to fool those wild drivers. What waste of resources. It is clearly the unspoken rules of those clubs united. Don't even think about going to Panlong Mountain without a club, so quickly choose a club to join, otherwise they will target you. What is the actual situation? No matter what club you join, as long as you are not the best ones, I am afraid you will be targeted on the track. The SSC club dared to send players to intercept on the track. Who knows what kind of dirty things those clubs on the provincial track will do. Okay, I know, I will consider this matter as soon as possible. Sun Yan nodded, staring at the bubbling beer in the cup and thinking secretly. There are still about 4 months before the provincial track. He should be able to collect enough money during this period. As long as he has money, coaches, pilots, and drivers are not a problem. At most, he can just make up the numbers. Anyway, as long as he has Xingqian, he can solve everything on the track. His palm suddenly felt warm. He looked down and saw Xingqian's hand drilled into his big hand. The soft fingers passed through the fingers and clenched it. Looking up, Xingqian was looking at him with curved eyebrows and eyes, and the other hand was clenched into a small fist and waved up and down. Oh, Durian King, come on. Sun Yan smiled, and felt that the irritability in his heart was swept away. Well, come on. The celebration lasted until 9 o'clock in the evening. Sun Yan and Xingqian came out of the Firefox Club. Looking at Sun Yan's back, Xingqian's pretty face was slightly red, and her fingers were kneading the edge of her racing suit. Her mind was full of little thoughts. Isn't it just right to go to the hot spring at this time? And today is a weekday, there must be private hot springs in the hot spring. She hasn't tried the idea that Lu Guang gave her before. It just so happens that she won the Greenfield Advanced competition today, so it shouldn't be a problem to take this opportunity to act coquettishly with Sun Yan. Lu Guang followed Xu Yuyang out of the club and walked out of the black market. She secretly turned her head and blinked at Xingqian, making a cheering gesture. She helped Xingqian arrange everything for the hot spring. As long as Xingqian took Sun Yan there, the boss would say that there was only a private hot spring left today. When the time comes, why not go in and relax? Xingqian was encouraged by Lu Guang, took a deep breath, rubbed her soft and pretty face, and her courage increased greatly, and her eyes became firm. Masita, the weather is so good today, Before he finished speaking, 2 people suddenly appeared behind the trash can next to the Firefox Club. It was Li Yaochen and Shifeng. Shifeng, Master, found the target. Li Yaochen, oh, start the action. Sun Yan. Xingqian clenched her fists, her silence was deafening. Sun Yan frowned. Shouldn't these 2 drivers and the girl who looked abnormal at first glance appear at the Silverstone circuit? What are they doing here now? And they are acting sneaky in broad daylight. What are you 2 doing here? Xingqian put her hands on her hips, her face was puffed up, and her eyes were about to spit fire. She finally mustered up the courage to ask Sun Yan to go on a date, but these 2 showed up to make trouble. Li Yaochen pulled Shifeng close to Sun Yan and said expressionlessly, Sun Yan, we watched your Greenfield Advanced competition. You and Xingqian are very powerful. So what? Sun Yan felt that his head was starting to get bigger. Li Yaochen, so we plan to communicate with you. Shifeng, so we plan to find out your details. Li Yaochen, promote mutual understanding on the basis of our friendship. Shifeng, control all information under the guise of friendship. Li Yaochen, Shifeng and I will be honest with each other. Never hide anything. Shifeng, Master and I will be hypocritical. Be a shady guy. Li Yaochen, please agree to this friendly match. Shifeng, please cooperate with our investigation. Quote. Sun Yan and Xingqian. As the saying goes, within 3 steps of a crouching dragon, a phoenix will appear. The ancients were not wrong. It was not an accident that Li Yaochen could make a contract with Shifeng. It was a fate destined by heaven. Sun Yan silently blessed and hoped that the 2 would be locked in. You mean you want to compete with me and Xingqian before the Silverstone Advanced tournament? Is that right? Li Yaochen's eyes flashed, and he admired. As expected of a magician, his reading comprehension ability is high. Shifeng touched his chin and nodded slightly. He can even understand the master's words. The master of Xingqian's family is indeed not a normal human being. We need to be vigilant. Quote. Sun Yan simply ignored these two abnormal words and took them as what they meant. Li Yaochen and Shifeng seemed to be talking about something, but he didn't completely believe it. This might just be the character setting of the other party. These two looked weird, but they might just be a trick to lower vigilance. Xu Yuyang said before that Li Yaochen was the club's rookie leader and Shifeng was a top-level mecha girl with special skills. The combination of these two is definitely not an ordinary person. According to common sense, Li Yaochen and Shifeng's request should not be agreed to at this time. After all, it would be difficult to win if the opponent knew the trump card or figured out the weakness. But Sun Yan also wanted to know where Li Yaochen and Shifeng were strong. And there was a trump card that Li Yaochen and Shifeng could never predict or see. That was the 49 megapixels points in his hand. Maybe I can use this competition to create an illusion for Li Yaochen and Shifeng. Quote. Sun Yan's mouth curled up with a fox-like smile, to find out the truth. Well, who is going to find out whose truth is still unknown? These two rotten eggs are so bad. They actually want to deceive the smart Durian King and the extremely smart Durian King. The Durian King will not be fooled, let alone the Durian King. Xingqian complained in her heart. She secretly pulled Sun Yan's sleeve and was about to remind him. As a result, Sun Yan had already waved his hand and laughed with an impassioned look. Ha ha ha, no problem, I agree to this competition. The old man was very happy. It's refreshing to communicate with someone like you. Li Yaochen really thinks Sun Yan is very attractive. Usually when he talks to other drivers, as long as he doesn't know him, he will be impatient or look at him like a psychopath. Only Sun Yan is willing to look him in the face, respect him, and accommodate him, and the key is that he won't reject him. Such a person, even if the boss wants to target him, he must give him absolute fairness. It's a pity that he already has Shifeng, otherwise. Sun Yan's shoulders trembled and he took 2 steps back. Li Yaochen's affectionate eyes at this moment made him feel cold all over. This buddy is not a fool. Shifeng frowned, feeling a sense of crisis, and turned around to intercept Li Yaochen and Sun Yan. He spread his hands and read out the rules with a serious face. It's better to do it now than to wait for a day. The investigation operation starts now. There is an underground race in the black market next door. Master has bribed the boss there. No illegal modifications are allowed in this underground race. Its track is quite good. The first prize is a car Okamoto 001 Wolf Fang edition. Master and I like it very much. Sun Yan's mouth twitched. Aren't these two weirdos just going for the first prize? What's the use of that thing? Mecha girls and humans can't have children. Wait, Masaga, isn't it for delay? Sun Yan narrowed his eyes, and at this moment he felt that he had seen through everything. After both parties confirmed the information, they took action immediately, but neither Sun Yan nor Li Yaochen noticed that since they left the Haidang Street black market, there was a little tail with a hood against the wall tracking them. Civilized Street is the second largest black market in Zhongyuan City. Sun Yan only found out that the black market in Xu Yuyang's hands was really civilized after he came here. This black market is really chaotic. You can see gamblers and drug addicts playing vaping games everywhere. Many robot girls are armed with weapons. From the mottled marks on the rocket launcher, Sun Yan guessed that this thing should be a real thing, not the kind of toy that explodes with pepper or ink. Hey, Mr. Li, you are here. Our drivers and robot girls are ready and waiting for you. The boss of the civilized black market is a bald fat man with a face full of fat. He wears a big gold chain. His shrewd little eyes are sandwiched between the two fat on his face, making it difficult for people to see his depth. However, he is quite respectful to Li Yaochen and Shifeng. Li Yaochen nodded to the boss. Come here as if you were at home. Don't be polite to me. The boss was stunned and his expression gradually became demented. I have heard that this new ace of the RRC club has a weird personality. He was very straightforward when I gave him money before, but he was taciturn, serious and difficult to get along with, which was somewhat different from the description of his weird personality in the rumors. Now that he opened his mouth, the boss confirmed it instantly. It is indeed weird, and the rumors are correct. The key figures are in place, and the underground race has officially begun. The venue of this underground race is on the highway near Wenming Street. There is a large cemetery group next to Wenming Street. Early cemeteries and newly built cemeteries are stacked on the hilltops, and the multi-phase construction has also created a complex and diverse road environment here. Moreover, no one comes to the cemetery area at night, which is just suitable for racing. The owner of the civilized black market obviously knows the people in the cemetery, and it is not the first time to hold an underground race here. He just said hello and let everyone go. Everyone, this is the location of our underground race tonight, the civilized cemetery. The boss stood in front of a group of drivers with a loudspeaker and shouted, "Let me make it clear first, no one is allowed to use illegal modifications tonight. If you are caught, you will be disqualified immediately. In addition, there are two special guests for this underground race, namely the new ace of the RRC club, Li Yaochen Shifeng, and our king of knocks, Sun Yan Xingchen, who is known as a magician." All eyes were cast on them. Li Yaochen and Shifeng were still expressionless. Sun Yan touched his nose awkwardly. To be honest, he felt so ashamed to be called a magician and be watched like this. On the contrary, Xingchen next to him was holding two durians and laughing foolishly, and he had completely entered the competition state. The street of the civilized cemetery is very wide, at least the starting point is like this, so the black market boss directly arranged 5 cars to start at the same time. Li Yaochen, Sun Yan, we are all wild racers in the black market, and we can't use illegal modifications today, so let them start first, and you two can start later. The black market boss came up to Sun Yan and Li Yaochen stood in front of him, rubbing his hands that were cold from the night wind, with a sly smile on his face. Road races are different from rally races. Rally races have a complex environment, and encountering stones, puddles, and even sheep on the road is possible, but 99% of such things will not happen in road races. So, starting first becomes an advantage. Especially when multiple cars start at the same time, and the interval between each group of starts is only 10 seconds, then the first player to start can grab the track in advance. This can also be regarded as a little selfishness of the black market boss. After all, 2 professional players come to challenge the black market race, and it is stipulated that illegal modifications cannot be used. How can other wild drivers survive? They should give them some hope, right? That car Okamoto 001 is still quite valuable. No problem for me. Li Yaochen nodded. For him and Shifeng, it doesn't matter whether they start first or later, they just kill them anyway. Sun Yan and Xingchen looked at each other and nodded. "Hey, boss, can I join the race?" A crisp voice suddenly sounded, and the hooded girl emerged from the nearby shadows like a ghost. She took off her hood, revealing her silver shoulder-length hair and amethyst-like eyes. The boss looked Zidian up and down, and finally confirmed that she was a mecha girl. "Where is your driver?" "I don't have a driver." Zidian raised her eyes, pursed her lips, and looked stubborn. "Is it not possible to drive without a driver?" "It's possible." The boss scratched his head. It was the first time he encountered such a situation. In the girl's stubborn eyes, he pointed at the wild drivers. "Then you can start with them." Zidian nodded, put his hands in his pockets and walked into the team of wild drivers and mecha girls, ignoring the surprised or curious eyes around him, looking arrogant. "Master, it's the mecha girl from the duel field." Xingchen lowered his voice and leaned close to Sun Yan's ear. "Why is she here?" "And she wants to drive herself." "Maybe it's for the prize money." Sun Yan remembered Zidian's life experience. This mecha girl is still working hard to make money to pay off the penalty, so she will definitely try her best to participate in all underground competitions with generous prize money. The first place in this competition is a car Okamoto 001. This thing costs 20 yuan per piece. God knows how many there are in a car. The price of selling it is inestimable. The second place is 500,000 yuan in prize money, and the third place is 250,000 yuan, which is not bad. At the boss's call, everyone took their positions. Sun Yan and Li Yaochen were at the end with their respective mecha girls. Sun Yan. While waiting for the game to start, Li Yaochen suddenly turned his head and said seriously, "Don't take it lightly. The boss said that illegal modifications cannot be used, provided that he doesn't find out. There is no monitoring on the entire track, and the distance between the observation points of each stage is also far. Do you understand what I mean?" Sun Yan certainly understood. He could tell from the looks of those wild racers before that there were many wild racers and mecha girls who respected him as the king of Nox and magician, but people were divided, and there were many malicious looks in those looks. Perhaps for some wild racers, using illegal modifications to ruin a professional racer, or even a talented racer, is a very fulfilling thing. Thanks for the reminder, but just take care of yourself. Facing the biting night wind, Sun Yan's eyes sank slightly. These wild racers want to play tricks. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.